2, we will call the meeting to order. If everyone would please sit down. At this point, we would like to ask everyone if they have their cell phones with them this morning, if they would please put them on silent. Thank you. And this morning we have the principal from Trinity Lutheran Church with us this morning, Ron Fritchie. Did I say it right or some version of it right? Okay, good. Welcome.
Please rise for prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you with thankful hearts, thankful for the recent rain, thankful for the cooler weather. Thank you for the blessings you have bestowed on us, both individually and as a city. We ask that you be with us in this meeting today and with each of our elected officials. We ask that you help them make decisions that are pleasing in your sight and beneficial to the citizens of San Angelo. Please continue to watch over us and guide us. We pray all this in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Now we also have today with us the 4th and 8th through 8th graders, Trinity Lutheran Church. And Ron, are you going to join them in leading us in pledge as well? Come on up here, everyone. Great. Fantastic. You want to come right up here so you can lead us through? Why don't the rest of you come on up a little bit more?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Allegiance to thee,
Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We will now have do our proclamations. Do I have someone here from the Development Disabilities Organization? Amy, are you here today? Perfect. Come on up, girl. I'm good. How are you today? Good to see you. The month of March 2018 has been designated as National Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month in order to celebrate and recognize people with disabilities. And disability is a natural part of the human experience and in no way diminishes the right of people with disabilities to make choices, contribute to society, and experience in full the many blessings of American society. And family members, friends, and the community at large all play a role in supporting people with disabilities as they pursue their dreams. And the goals of this city properly include helping people with disabilities realize full access to housing, employment, and the recreational activities which help create productive and satisfying lives and to live as independently as possible. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2018 as Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month in the City of San Angelo and call upon the citizens of San Angelo to observe the month with appropriate programs and activities. Furthermore, I encourage the citizens of San Angelo to seek information from those organizations with expertise in matters concerning professionals who support individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Let's just hug and shake hands. Hi, dear. Okay, would you like to speak?
Sure,
And then
thank
we'll
you.
have some pictures, okay?
Sure, thank you. Thank you so much for the proclamation this month. So I work at Mosaic. We're a nonprofit organization that works with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we work to provide people with a meaningful life and a caring community while giving voice to the needs of people with disabilities. And I just wanted to say that I thought it was kind of fun that we're having the proclamation read the same time as the Trinity Lutheran Schools, because Mosaic was actually started in the Lutheran Church. So we were started in the Lutheran Church, although we do serve all faiths now. But thank you very much.
Ron, would you like to come up, or would you like some of your students to come up with you as well? Yes, they may. Come on. Probably should have had you stay up here, and then we could have done you first.
Stand all the way back up against the desk back there and make a little semicircle. That'd be great. We're going to take a picture here in a minute, too, so we'll squeeze together a little bit.
For over 150 years, Lutheran schools have provided communities, states, and the country with Christian leaders in business, politics, military, ministry, education, and other fields. And National Lutheran Schools Month is also an occasion for schools to interest citizens in volunteering their time and talents to local Lutheran schools. And this year's theme is It's Still All About Jesus. And Lutheran schools have provided a quality Christian education program that has inspired students to serve others through civic engagement and provided students with opportunities to serve while equipping them with the tools they need to fulfill their future roles as good citizens, productive employees, and compassionate leaders. And in keeping with this year's theme, locally, we are joining with Trinity Lutheran School as they celebrate almost 67 years of service to our community. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2018 as National Lutheran Schools Month and encourage everyone to pay tribute to the dedication and service of Trinity Lutheran School for their many years of commitment to the community of San Angelo.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Mary. Okay.
Stand up.
Go back to school.
Can we stay? Somebody said, can we stay? Okay, what happened here?
We will now go into public comment. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Council members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The council takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do we have any public comment today?
Yes, Mayor, my name's Steve Hampton. I would like to hear more about item D on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Any other public comment? If not, we will move into the consent agenda. I'm going to start with Billy, and is there anything you'd like to pull from the consent agenda, Billy?
Let's pull item D, please.
Okay. Lane?
She said it.
Okay.
I have nothing to pull, but I would like to wish my daughter, Brooke Sanchez, a very happy birthday today.
Very good.
Happy birthday.
Tommy?
No, ma'am.
Tom?
No, ma'am.
Harry?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So we are going to pull item D. And with that, do I have a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda with the exception of item D?
So moved, Mayor.
A second?
Second.
Is there any further public comment? If not, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda with the exception of item D, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. So we will go to item D. Consider awarding RFP P1-01-18 television studio to Nelco Media Incorporated in the amount of $294,158.80, budgeted in the fiscal 18, and to be paid using PEG fees, a designated funding source, and authorizing the city manager or designee to execute any related documents.
Morning, Council. Anthony Wilson, I'm your Public Information Officer. And this project is a little similar to one that we brought before you a couple of weeks ago, and that was for having some audio-video equipment installed into City Auditorium. And they're similar in that the funding source for this project is the same as that project. And you'll recall that is something that we call the PEG fee, PEG standing for Public Educational Governmental Access Channel, which SATV Channel 17 is the city's governmental access channel. And Suddenlink, as our cable provider, provides us a fee that can only be used for one thing and one thing only, and that is for capital expenditures that relate to putting content onto the PEG channel, SATV. And so that fund has accumulated more than $500,000, so we're here to propose using a portion of those funds in order to equip a television studio. Some of you are aware that the public information offices have been moved to the second floor of the City Hall Annex, where the water offices now are. And so we are proposing to develop that space into a television studio so that when we produce shows such as talk shows or other sorts of programming, we can walk in, we can flip on a switch, and we can begin recording using a lot of the same technology that we have here in the convention center. It's going to improve our efficiency. It's going to improve the production value of what we do on Channel 17. And again, these funds can only be used for this sort of project. They cannot be used for operating expenditures, only for capital improvements. And I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Lucy, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
Lane? Billy?
No, thank you, Anthony.
Tom? Tommy?
No, ma'am.
Harry?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, any further public comment? With no further public comment, then we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving item D from the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. We will now move into the regular agenda. The first item, A, consider adoption of an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of City of San Angelo, Texas combination tax and limited surplus revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2018, appointing a pricing officer and delegating to the pricing officer the authority to approve on behalf of the city the sale of the certificates. the terms of the certificates, and the offering documents for the certificates, establishing certain parameters for the approval of such matters by the pricing officer, approving the use of a paying agent registrar agreement, leveling an annual ad valorem tax and providing for the security for and payment of said certificates, providing an effective date, and enacting other provisions relating to the subject. That's a big statement. Not sure I know what I just read, but
Good job, Mayor.
You can thank the attorneys
we
for
got
that
through
one, Mayor.
that. Okay, Tina, you're
Good
on.
morning, Mayor, Council, and Mr. Valenzuela. I'm Tina Deersky, the Director of Finance. You've heard mention of this bond issue before. We came to get permission to publish the notification of intent to issue these bonds at not to exceed $16.5 million. This agenda item is to allow the pricing officer, namely me, to accept the bids when they come in, and of course, we would accept the lowest bid that comes in as far as the interest rate. And so that's what this agenda item allows us to do. Any questions?
I have questions from council. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving item A, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Item B, consider approving the following items. 1, allocating up to $374,000 for capital projects, including $294,000 from the hotel occupancy tax fund balance for facility improvements. And 2, awarding bid COL-01-18 to Accurate Air Solutions for the replacement of a chiller for the Foster Communications Coliseum, First Community Federal Credit Union Spur Arena in the amount of $170,921, and authorizing the city manager or his designee to negotiate and execute a contract and any related documents. Sydney, you're on.
Good morning, Council. Good morning, Mayor. First of all, I want to start off with our facility projects. Phase 1, we completed 11 of the 12 facility projects. The project that we did not complete was the resurfacing of the farmers market. With the research that we've done, there is extensive work that we need to do in several other areas as well, so we would like to be able to bring that back to you all in the future. For right now, we would like to be able to just repatch those areas and move along with that. We will also be starting on the lower ring for the Coliseum with allocated funds from 2014. Those funds were allocated then, and we finished the VIP roof, the lobby roof, and also the main dome. And we're looking to complete the lower ring with those allocated funds that were already approved in 2015. And also, we're going to use the capital improvement funds for the convention center for the interior restoration. That was something else that we took off of our list, and we will be able to handle that in-house as well.
It says completed 11 of the 12 facility projects. Would you go through what those 11 facility projects are, Sydney?
Yes, so those 11 projects would be, first we started off with so we started off with the sewer project that was here at the convention center. That was one of the projects that we did. We did also do the river stage chairs, the new chairs that we did purchase. We also did the retiling for the Coliseum as well. For that area, we did purchase new doors for the backside of the Coliseum too. We also completed the Paseo, the doors at the Paseo as well, and the lights, changing the LED lighting for the Paseo too as well. The other projects were as well give me 1 second. Yes, sir. The roof project as well for the convention center is another project that we did complete. I know I'm missing something at the Coliseum as well that was also completed.
We can go on
Come
our
back.
presentation and we can come back with those. I think that generally summarizes it.
Yes, there was a few other projects too as well that was completed for those projects too.
Your interior restoration for the convention center involves what?
Interior restoration involves, if you notice in the hallways over here, we do have damage to our walls that was from the rain as well, and leaks in certain areas. With the replacement of the roof that was done this past year, we're now moving on to getting that completed with the interior restoration.
Thank you.
So the timeline of the events that we have completed, in December, we actually took a tour with city staff as well as our civic events board in December of all of our civic event venues. We took it to our board for the discussion in January with a board recommendation in last month in February. The three keys that we're looking for, that we're looking to cover with these projects that we're looking to do are some of them are safety issues, others are cost savings, and then also loss of business and revenue. We definitely do not want to lose any type of business that we already have as well. So for our facilities projects phase 2, the needs that we're looking at is for the Coliseum, if you can see, we're looking at the safety needs. Those safety needs include changing out the exit lighting that's also needed over there, the emergency lighting as well. There's a lot of safety issues that we would like to take care of for our customers' needs moving forward. Also, we have the chiller replacement for the Coliseum. There's 3 chillers that's out there. One of the chillers has been down for several years. We've been robbing parts off of there to make sure all the other 2 have been working. Sooner or later, we're going to need to replace that chiller as well to be able to keep going for that. The stage for the Coliseum, we're at 60,000. It's 60 years old. And it's about time for us to be able to get a new stage. Of course, with technology, there's other things that's out there that's a lot more durable, a lot more safer for our employees as well to be able to move those around. The electrical repair for the river stage. Last year, whenever we did have one of our concerts and events, we're starting to notice that we're needing more power in certain areas and a lot more outlets too as well. So there's a lot of electrical repair that will help us at the river stage for us to be safer whenever we do have those big events out there at the river stage. LED lighting for the Coliseum is at $30,000. With the LED lighting, that is for the main area. That LED lighting will give us a cost savings in savings over the 10 years would be about around $20,448 as well. So, I mean, there's some pretty good cost savings for us that we would like to move forward to. Plus, if you know, in the Coliseum, it takes us, when we're turning on the lights in there, it does take about 10 to 15 minutes to be able to turn on. Moving to the LED lighting with a click of with the switch going up, we'll be able to turn those lights on immediately. As well as with the spotlights. Right now we're down to only 2 spotlights. Whenever we do have major events that come into the Coliseum, we're in need of at least 4 spotlights. So coming up in 2 weeks, we have WWE, and they're in need of 4 spotlights. So we're going to have to go out and rent some to be able to keep that event coming to San Angelo.
What's the rental cost for a spotlight?
Rental costs, it really varies. We would have to go to Dallas. If I remember correctly, it was approximately about $3,000 is what we spent last time for, I want to say 3 of them, but I think that was over a consecutive amount of days. So with our civic event facility needs, our total estimated cost is $364,000 with a project contingency of $10,000. With the total amount requested is $374,000. Now, with our first phase of projects, we were able to save at least $80,000 from those projects. So the amount that we're coming to you all needing is $294,000. Our current Fund 410 balance, I apologize, that's the wrong slide up there, but our current Fund 410 balance is $1 million. That is our current Fund 410 balance right there, which is a little less than $700,000. But the fund balance that we would like to take that from, it would be the 605 balance, which is $1.3 million. That's in there as of January 31st. And 2018 hot receipts we're budgeted at is looking at $1.8 million. That's where we're at. So, any questions on the items that we're needing?
Do we have questions from council? Billy, you look like you have a question.
I do. Could you back up a couple of slides? No, go forward one. So you're requesting $374,000
Yes, ma'am.
and you said you had facility project savings of 80,000.
Yes, ma'am.
My first question, because I have a couple, my first is, you said earlier that you completed 11 of 12 projects, and that one that you didn't complete was at Farmers Market?
Yes, ma'am. The one that we did not complete is the resurfacing of the farmers market area. With the quote that we did receive for it, we would need to finish out the farmers market area as well as the paseo. The total of that is actually $50,000, and with what we're trying to move forward with, we're looking at bringing that forth later on in the future, because the items that we're looking at now we feel is more important.
Higher priority?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Moving forward than just doing that right now. We're gonna just go ahead and repatch those areas for right now, but soon in the future, we'll have to come back and discuss resurfacing all of those areas total.
Right now, you would have that $50,000 in your funds, so it's not an issue about not having the funds, it's just not what you're presenting today for approval?
When we first did it, we did get, we were receiving $11,640, I believe, for the resurfacing, but when we went back into it, there was other needs under the farmer's market, the lot. They use a certain type of machine to be able to get under those areas, so that was gonna make the labor a little bit higher than where we were.
And to clarify, that $80,000 is savings from his projects from last time. So those dollars are not available for him to spend right now because y'all allocated those for specific projects. So he's saying he saved $80,000. You need to reauthorize him to be able to spend those on these upcoming projects.
So, I'm sorry, can I continue,
Yeah,
Mayor?
go ahead.
So my next question, you talked about the 410 fund versus the hot tax fund, or
Yes, ma'am.
whatever that was, 410. Go forward one. So you were requesting money, I mean, it looks like your current fund balance of 699 is almost, you would use all of that, and then the remainder you would want from the hot.
Yes, but also keep in mind for our Fund 410 balance, we do have a 90-day emergency fund too, as well, of $425,000. So that would be taken away from there as well for our 90-day balance. So that would leave us with a lot more less than $699,000.
So your emergency fund would include things like when the convention center got flooded? Or what would be an emergency?
So we have a goal of keeping 90 days worth of operating expenditures in the fund balance, and I think that's what Sid is referring to as emergency fund balance. That would be our goal, to always keep that in there in the event that we did not see revenues or expenditures come out the way that we had previously budgeted. And so that's what we always try to keep in all of our funds. It's a goal for fund balance.
Okay.
As far
Describe
as
what the 410
So
balance
Fund 410 is the Civic Events Fund, and so that's where we track things like the Coliseum, the Convention Center, Paseo, all of those civic events types items, and we track the revenues and expenses of those in there. The hotel occupancy tax is tracked in Fund 605, yes. And so we budget for the revenue for hotel occupancy tax in 605, and then we budget an expenditure of 48% of that amount goes to Fund 410, and they receive that as revenue to use for civic events.
Right now, your hot tax money is on budget.
It is actually slightly above budget, yes, ma'am.
Billy, did you have a further question?
That answered
Do
mine.
I have
Thanks,
further
Sydney.
questions?
Yes, ma'am.
From Tom, Tommy, or Harry? And are you ready for us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do I have a motion to?
Motion to approve.
A second?
Wait, before you take a vote, we want to clarify that you're actually approving two things. You're approving the expenditure of the funds as well as accepting a bid for the chiller at the Coliseum.
So, Tina, are you going to have to bring a budget amendment back to spend the fund balance portion?
Yes, since we are accessing fund balance, that is a budget amendment that will require council approval. We expect to bring that in April.
That portion of this item, you'll see
The
again
two hundred ninety-four thousand.
as a budget amendment in a future agenda.
So so are we approving item 1 and 2 on item B? And do we need to take a separate vote on 1 and 2?
You can take one vote on both items, just as long as that's part of the motion.
Okay. So is that part of the motion?
Yeah, there's a separate presentation.
He does have a second presentation as part of this. So you can do it either way. You could take a motion on each individual item, or you can just take a motion at the end.
Why don't we just wait and do it at the end? We'll get
Okay.
it all in one.
We'll do.
Do you want to read? Okay, so now we're looking at considering awarding the bid for, to Accurate Air Solutions for the replacement of the chiller for Foster Communications Coliseum, First Community Federal Credit Union Spur Arena, in the amount of $170,921, and authorizing the city manager as designee to negotiate and execute a contract and any related documents. So we had 16 RFP invitations that were sent out, and 9 vendors participated actually in the pre-bid, which took place in December, and then 4 proposals were received in January. Out of those 4 proposals, Accurate Air Solutions out of Abilene was the lowest and also qualified. That included a unit, the install, 2-year warranty on parts, labor, and refrigerant. The chiller replacement would be $165,913 with the additional 1-year warranty of $5,008, which would make the total cost $170,921. The source of funding, of course, would come out of Fund 605, hotel occupancy tax of $1.3 million. And looking for approval, our Civic Events Advisory Board did approve of us getting the chiller replacement as well as city staff.
Okay, so that chiller is one of 3.
Yes, ma'am.
And the other 2 are
In good working condition. Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Do I have questions, comments from council on the chiller? If not, then Tommy, you want to present your motion? Tom.
I motion to approve as written. Is that what you need on this, Brian? Motion to approve.
Item.
Items 1 and 2.
Is there a second? Lucy seconds it. Do we have public comment on agenda item B, 1 or 2? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor of approving item B, 1 and 2, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item C, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance amending Chapter 5, Business and Commerce, Section 5.04.034, by creating an exception to the entrant merchant permit for persons holding a mobile or temporary food establishment permit or food trucks. And John, you're on.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. As you probably know, we've been looking at food truck regulations. We held a forum for the public and food truck owners, and got a lot of good feedback from them on things that we could do to streamline the process. We're looking at a number of things, and this is just the first piece of the puzzle. This is a fairly simple one. Right now, food truck vendors have to go through the itinerant business permit process, which means going to the police department, getting fingerprinted and all of that. And that was really designed for people who go to door-to-door sales or people who set up in parking lots selling, vending things. And so that was one of the things we heard from the food truck vendors, that this was really something that's not necessary. And after reviewing this, we agreed that this process really wasn't designed for food trucks. And so basically what this does is create an exemption if you hold a food truck permit or a mobile or temporary food permit. This would exempt you from that itinerant business permit. That would prevent them from having to go to the police department. One of the other things we've done that really isn't part of this but is related, doesn't require any ordinance changes, but we're streamlining the process. There was some confusion from food truck owners Do they start with PD? Do they go get their food permit from health? Also, there's a review by planning and fire marshal, and so what we've done is simplified that. PD's out of it if you adopt this change, but they would start with the health department with their food truck application. Then that would be routed from health to planning and the fire marshal. So the person with the food truck doesn't have to go from place to place. We would do all that internally. Once it's ready to issue the permit, that would be issued by health. And so we think that would streamline it. Like I said, we're looking at a number of other changes. Sandra's looking at some changes on the health food side. We're looking at some changes from the planning side, but again, this is just the first piece. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council, Billy?
So, John, is there any kind of background check through health or planning or anybody on, a proposed food truck vendor?
I don't believe so. I mean, what we're trying to move towards is having them fall under the same requirements as any other restaurant. So we don't run background checks on waiters and people who work in a brick and mortar restaurant. So this would just simplify it and make them meet the same requirements.
Thank you.
Lane, did you have a comment? Okay.
So I'll move to approve as presented.
Wait, second. Is there any public comment on item C? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor of approving item C, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. Item D. Public hearing and first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Traffic Control, Article 10.04, Stopping, Standing, and Parking, Division 1, generally, Section 10.04.003, Stopping, Standing, or Parking prohibited in specified places by creating subdivision F, parking temporarily prohibited during street maintenance activities, regulating parking on public roadways during street maintenance activities as designated by the Director of Public Works, providing for notice of street maintenance activities, and pursuant to Section 2308.354 of the Texas Occupations Code, appointing a city designee with authority to immobilize and remove vehicles from public roadways during street maintenance activities where parking is temporarily prohibited, providing repealing and savings clauses, and providing an effective date. Russell, you're on. Simplify that for everybody, if you would, please.
That's a
Could you
mouthful
repeat
as
that?
well.
Could you repeat that? I missed it.
We've had a couple of those this morning already, haven't we?
Got all that, Russell?
Yeah. Thank you all for having me this morning. So I'm just going to basically quickly go over the intent of this ordinance and just a brief explanation of this ordinance, which will hopefully be fewer words than what Brenda just had to regurgitate. So what we're bringing this ordinance to you for is for towing of vehicles in the public right-of-way during our scheduled maintenance activities for seal coat and any utility, planned utility rehab projects that we have coming up. And the main thing that we're trying to prevent here is what I have shown here in this picture is during our seal coating projects, a lot of times we'll get vehicles that get left in the street. And we've tried contacting homeowners, or the homeowner doesn't have the capability to move the vehicle. And so what oftentimes happens, and if you can see here, there's what we call a skip. We have this area here where we seal coated the remainder of the street, but where this vehicle was parked, we were unable to seal coat that portion. Same thing in this picture here. We have another skip where we had to go around the vehicle. And what we want to do with this ordinance is basically eliminate having those instances where we have to leave a skip, an incomplete project, basically. A lot of times during the construction or the seal coat construction, we do make an effort to come back to these areas to make sure that in case they have been able to move it since we've been there, we go back and seal coat them. But there still is always a handful that we're unable to do during the actual seal coat project. So what this ordinance requires us to do is to give every homeowner a minimum of 7-day notice that we're going to be in the area, going to be working in the area, and that we need them to move their vehicles. What we're going to do with this ordinance too is we're not going to necessarily impound these vehicles. We're going to get with a tow truck. They're going to come pick up the vehicle, move it around the corner long enough for us to seal coat the entire street, and then we'll come back and put it back where we found it, and move on to the next street or what have you. But there again, this ordinance is not intended to impound vehicles. It's intended to just move them out of the way while we're doing our maintenance activities and put them back in place. There are other cities that do this. We've checked with Midland, Odessa. They currently do this. Abilene may do this as well. I don't recall right off the top of my head, but this is where we got the idea from. Our contractors that have been working with us the last 2 or 3 years, they've mentioned this to us, and they've, they want to have a good product too at the end of the day, and they just thought that, to pass us along, hey, Midland's doing this, why can't San Angelo do it too? So we looked into that, and we're moving forward with it, and that's what we're trying to come to conclusion on today.
When you say requires a minimum 7 days notice, how are we notifying people? Because that endlessly becomes
Sure.
the comment that I didn't get notified. How did you notify me?
Right.
What's the method?
So the method of notification is definitely on seal coat. What we do is we require that, or we put it in our contract that the contractor has to go out and do door hangers 7 days prior to doing the construction in that area. So what they do is they go to every door and put a flyer on there saying, hey, we're going to be here, within this time frame, and, this is, subject to being towed if you don't have your vehicle out of the way. What we can also do is we can also do a public meeting if that's necessary. But that's been just our standard practice, is just to go door to door with flyers.
Russell, I understand hanging, something on the door or taping something on the door, but when I was campaigning, there was so often times people hadn't been in their front door in forever, based on what was built up at their front door. So, I'm sure some people probably don't get that notification, but the thing that you said that sort of concerned me is that we will move the car so that we can get a good product, and then we'll put it back. So if we have a resident who is unable to move their vehicle, I wonder why that is, and why would we put it back? It sounds like it must be a disabled vehicle, and the police department tags disabled vehicles.
Correct.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused on why we would put that back
Right.
if the
And
owner
we-
couldn't move.
Right. And
They might be on vacation. They might be on a wonderful 2-week luxury cruise, for example, and maybe
That's only Lucy,
weren't
though.
able-
Lucy.
and we have found that too. Or my son. This is my son's vehicle, and he's in the military. We've had that as well. Where that he's deployed across, who knows where, and we've run into that issue as well. So it's not always that it's a disabled vehicle, but PD does still have that capability to do that. Under PD's ordinance for towing vehicles, it doesn't necessarily address maintenance activities, and that's why I'm bringing this here today, so that we can more specifically address our maintenance activities and, get a good product at the end of the day. And, if we do notice that it appears to have been there for a number of days, we can report that to PD and address that at a later date.
And in reading some of the background material on this, it looks like there is a $75 towing fee, and the city pays that. And I'm a little bit confused. Why is that the city's obligation and not the residents?
Well, I'll have to get with Teresa on that a little bit, just because, under this ordinance, there is a penalty clause, that this could be classified as a misdemeanor, and that we could potentially, depending on the situation, we could take it, to further action, based on if they're confrontational or something to that effect, or, I don't know what it would entail, but, we could recoup our costs that way. The intention with this ordinance was not to penalize someone, because we are trying to do maintenance activities. and typically on an average seal coat, we have anywhere from about 5 to 10 vehicles that we have to work around. So, in the overall cost of the project, I didn't see it as being a huge burden to the cost to get the final project or product to where we need it. So that's, that was just estimated costs.
I was just curious about that because you're right. Based on $75 for 10 cars, it's not an exorbitant expense, but I still just wonder why the city is responsible for that.
I think part of the concern there is that in order for us to hold the property owner responsible for that fee, there would have to be a court proceeding saying that they violated the ordinance, and it would be a long, extended process. It would tie up courts. It could potentially involve police. We're trying to get this activity out of the police department. The car impoundment rules are pretty rigid as to how that operates, and it takes a lot of police time. So that's one reason we weren't having a lot of active enforcement on these vehicles prior to passing this ordinance.
So it's more cost-effective to do it the way we have been doing it.
Absolutely,
Is that what,
yes.
Thank you.
Lane, did you have a comment or question?
Yes. How can we keep the 7 days of notice in check? Because coming from experience, my notice came 45 minutes before they showed up on my on my street.
Sure.
And then one of the workers parked out in front of my truck, laying on his horn, waking up the newborn. And, at this point, I'm trying to save my wife and every new mother from murder at this point because he's...
Right. I mean, it's what we have in our contract. Oftentimes, these guys they move very quickly, and it is hard to keep that in check. But, we'll just have to hold them to it on the contract. If we can maybe come up with some type of liquidated damages for that. So that's something we would have to look at into our contract before we move into
that. They're moving pretty fast out of that 7-day notice, and it is a 45. If there's a car parked out in front on a street, are they going to go door to door again and say, "Hey, is this your car?" or make the effort to try to find out whose vehicle?
Yeah, no, we do that regardless. Trying to, just trying to get the project completed. I mean, they, even though they've done a skip in the past, they still come back before they leave town to every one of those locations and still do a follow-up to see whose vehicle that is, and we'll, be continuing to do that as well.
Harry, I think you had a question or comment?
Right, it's really more of a comment based on what Billy said earlier. I wonder if we know approximately when these contractors are going to be on every street. I wonder if we take that opportunity to work with code compliance a little earlier than that to try to come out and look at some of these vehicles that may be disabled to try to move through that process before the contractor has to come down that street.
Sure, that's something we can do.
Let me ask you a question. Does the notice specify that there will be a $75 fee if it's not moved on the day of? Because it's one thing for us to talk about it here, but I think there needs to be in the notice that's placed at that residence that there will be a fee if the car has to be removed.
The fee is actually paid by the city, but what the notice requires is the type of maintenance activity to be conducted, the expected duration of the activity during which parking is going to be prohibited, and a reference to this ordinance saying that we can move your vehicle. But the fee is intended under this ordinance to be paid by the city.
Lucy, you wanted to make a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to ask you, Russell, you said you got this ordinance from other cities. Did they ever have any problems with people coming back and saying, "Hey, you did this to my car," or it didn't have this dent when you, all that kind of stuff?
The liability involved with it, sure. Yeah, I'm sure they do to some extent. But, how that's handled, I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to, there again, defer to Teresa.
I'm like a lawyer. When this was proposed, that is the exact question I had. And what would happen is they would file a claim, like anybody else who says we damaged their property, and Risk would go out and evaluate their claim, and we would talk to the towing company and to the contractor and to decide whether or not we're going to pay or not pay those claims.
To Billy's point earlier, many people enter their home through their garage or their carport. And so the question mark is, are we working with the contractors to ensure that they understand that the front door is not always the most used door? Because if it's on many
Sure.
people's front doors, it can be a week before they
But
enter.
we don't
and-
want to send a contractor to somebody's back door, though, either.
Well, I'm not talking back doors, but a lot of carports are on the side of the house, and a lot of people, and many garages are on the side of the house. So the question mark is, you can usually tell on a door-by-door basis which door is most frequently used. And in fact, if there's 3 phone books at the front door, you probably know they're not using the front door.
Sure.
So I just want to make sure that we're working with contractors in terms of better understanding how we notify, because that always ends up being the problem. I wasn't notified. When did you notify me? I didn't get enough days' notice to be notified. It's always the big question mark out there.
Sure. And we can always ask the contractor, too, to put a date stamp on the notification as well, to notify them, hey, we were here on this date and you weren't here.
Mayor, I have a question
Yes,
for the
please,
city
Tom.
attorney. Why does this not include something in terms of a written notification in addition to the door hanging notification to the last known owner of that residence, 7 to 10 days, as well as the door hanger?
So like sending an actual mail
I'm
mail
talking
out?
about sending something through the United States mail.
Well, just because of the added cost that's included with having that mail out,
Do we have a clue what that cost is?
It
on a
depends
project?
largely on the project. Every year our seal coat project varies. This year we're doing an almost doubled project or doubled the size because, we finally got some funds back on the 2013 seal coat. So, it'll vary from year to year, but to actually pinpoint what that's, we can come up with that. It's definitely achievable to come up with that number for each project, but, to just budget for it every year would be.
Well, Lane is right. The mayor is right. The notification is going to be a big deal. We need to either work with the contractor more diligently, or we need to do something in addition to, and this is my opinion, in addition to just the door, because the mayor's right, Billy's right. In terms of campaigning, there's a lot of people that do not use their front door at all, ever use their front door. So we may need to rethink that or somehow impress upon the contractor, whomever they may be at.
Yeah, and it's just an added cost that's going to add to the project. We can do that. We can just add it into the contract that they, hey, we'll give you a list of addresses that these flyers need to go out to. And
I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying, I'm just wondering if that might, the question will arise. The question will arise. I didn't get notified. Why didn't I get notified? Lane gets notified 45 minutes in advance. So we just need to be prepared to deal with that at the time that it occurs.
Tom?
So with all this being said, is it legal to leave something on their mailbox? I mean, most people check their mail. So in these residential areas, I don't know what's legal, if you could leave it on something we check nearly every day.
no, that's a federal law that you can't do.
Federal law gets in there one more time.
As well as, there are other, areas of town that, they have a common mailbox, and, you don't necessarily have a mailbox at everybody's door too. So, you run into that issue as well.
Bentwood's all on a common mailbox, so that becomes complicated as well. Yes,
Have
if
to
you
go
have a
through the post system.
comment.
Yes, Mayor, how would it sound to you, council, if we asked Russell to work with Anthony for some kind of public service campaign to let people know to look for these postings on their front doors and try that as an interim step to a direct mail? If we did something like that, ran it regularly on 17, that would help. It wouldn't get us full coverage. There'd still be people we'd miss.
Sure, and we do that every year. We do that campaign every year to notify people, hey, we're going to be out doing seal coat, and every year we get somebody, hey, I didn't know y'all were going to be doing that. So,
Russell, how many cars are we talking about?
5 to 10.
5 to 10 each year?
Correct.
In total?
Total.
Well, that's not very many.
No.
We're spending a lot of words and effort on 5 to 10 cars over an annual basis. It's
Right.
not a
Yeah,
big issue.
I'm sorry, I thought I had said that.
Unless it's your car, it's not a big issue.
Yeah, right.
Well, we'll make sure it's
Mayor.
Lane's.
We know
Unless it's
Lane
your
doesn't use
car.
his.
Okay. Thank you. Any further question or comment from Russell? Okay, you'll have to remind me, I don't believe we've taken any a motion on this, so if one could give me a motion, that would be terrific.
I move approval.
In a second. Do I have public comment at this point? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. On item E, because it is lengthy, what we're going to do is take one at a time, and I'm going to read one at a time. I'm not going to read through the whole thing to begin with, because you'll forget what I said by the time I get to the end, and so will I. So, item E, consideration and first hearing of an ordinance of the City of San Angelo, Texas, amending Appendix A fee schedule for the following ordinances. 1, Article A6.000, which is the Parks and Recreation Fees, Section A6005, Park Facility and Activity Fees, Subpart E, Facility Rental Fees to provide rental fees for Kirby Park Pavilion.
Good morning again. I'm Tina Deersky, Director of Finance. You'll recall that we go through this annual fee review process on a 3-year rotational basis so that we can try to get through all of the different departments and divisions and make sure that the charges for services that we are charging are in line with the cost of those services. Our first fee that we're proposing today is a fee for Kirby Park Pavilion. The proposed fee is $300 with a $100 deposit. Cost of service in this case is really not applicable. It's just use of a space and the right to use that space free of any others using that space while you're using it. The financial impact in this case we expect to be about $1,200, so we're expecting possibly 4 times a year for that to happen.
And there currently is no fee.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. We do have fees for other pavilions and parks in the city, but this one we have not yet imposed a fee for. So this would include the pavilion and the concession at a proposed fee of $400 and a $100 deposit. We expect that this might happen twice a year, and so financial impact of $800. And as far as comparables with other cities, we're seeing Abilene at $300 for 7 hours with a $100 deposit, Odessa at $320 with a $100 deposit, Midland at $100 for every 2 hours. I should point out that that fee that we're proposing is a 12-hour time period, so to put that in line with that. Wichita Falls, $300 for 3 hours with a $150 deposit, and Round Rock at $200 for 2 hours, plus $25 for each additional hour with a $100 deposit. If you do have any questions about this, I did ask Carl White to be here to answer any questions you might have.
Do I have questions from someone on council? I have a question. Okay, so most cities have a limit to the amount of time that they get to use it. So certainly there's some weekends where someone might want it for a morning event and somebody might want it for a 6 o'clock event that evening. So we're going to allow someone a 12-hour use of a facility.
Yes, ma'am. We did talk about that a little internally. I don't know if Carl wants to come speak to the reasoning behind that.
And with that, do we have, it says a $100 deposit, do we have the ability to go and check that pavilion afterwards to see if all the trash has been cleaned up? What does that deposit get you, and what are the things that would prevent somebody from getting the deposit back?
This is for the large pavilion at Kirby Community Park, and when we finished the park in 2006, we intended not to rent it out because it was such a large pavilion, and we had several other pavilions we had available for renting for birthday parties. Since that time, we get about 3 to 4 requests from companies or from families to do family reunions at a large pavilion. So that got us to thinking about possibly opening this up for rental. Again, it's not going to be that often. We're not going to rent it during special events. If somebody wants it for 12 hours, they'll have that day, the entire day. And the board wanted to restrict it to only 1 day, not 2 days or more for the rental. So yes, if somebody wanted to rent it, they would have it for the whole day, between the hours of 8 and 10 o'clock, whatever they wanted. So it would only be 1 rental a day.
And is this the same thing? I'm assuming in the past, many nonprofits have used the pavilion at no cost. So would this mean that nonprofits would now pay to use the pavilion?
No, that's not the intent. This is strictly for private use, for family reunions, family functions, company events, not for nonprofit special event use. It would still go under the special event application process.
Carl, does Parks Department, is there a contact person?
I didn't answer your other question.
If in fact somebody comes up and says, "Oh, we had it rented from such," do you have? I can dream up some scenarios there, but do you have somebody that can be called to verify that they have that place rented for that 12-hour time?
We do have an on-call person, and also with our pavilion rentals, they do get a slip that shows that they've rented that facility for that date and that location and time period. And
the deposit fee?
Right, I didn't
Okay.
answer that question. So we do, we would be able to check. We have an on-call person, and we have a weekend person that goes out and does rounds. We could check before the rental, and we can check after the rental. We typically look for things that are damaged, less about the trash that's left behind. So it should be quite obvious if there is damage to a facility related to that event.
Well, I think that there needs to be a provision that says that they need to take their own trash away.
Right, there is that.
Okay.
In the rental.
Right. It looked like somebody's hand was going up. Did I have anybody's hand over here? No. Any other questions for Carl on item 1? Should we vote on each item? Okay, so at this point, do I have a motion
Motion to
for
approve
item
is presented.
E1? Harry, second by Lucy. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote on item E1. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, passes 7-0. So item 2, Article A6.000, Parks and Recreation Fees, Section A6005, Park Facility and Activity Fees, Subpart F, Miscellaneous Event Fees, to adjust summer camp weekly fee and add holding fee.
Okay, so this is a two-part request. Our current fee for the summer camp for kids is $55 per week per person. We're proposing a bit of an increase to $65 per week per person, and also to implement a holding fee of $10 per person. The cost of service is not necessarily not applicable, but it involves so many variables that it would be very time-consuming to calculate. So we're relying a lot more on the comps with this one, with local daycares and with other city-run camps. The financial impact that we expect would be about $13,200. I will tell you that the reason for the holding fee of $10 per week is that in the past, Recreation has seen kids show up for a couple weeks, then go a couple weeks with not coming, then maybe coming back, or maybe not coming back for the rest of the summer. And so we're losing revenue with not filling that spot with another potential child that could, whose family could really use our services. And so I'll show you the comps here. Abilene Summer Camp is $85 a week. The YMCA here in San Angelo is $98 to $112. Midland doesn't have a program. Wichita Falls is $100 for their camp. Round Rock is $70 to $100 per week, and College Station is $70 to $150 per week. And I do think Mr. Brent Casey is here to answer any questions you may have as far as the program.
Okay. Do we have questions from council? And so that $10 fee.
Go back a slide.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, do you have a question, Tom?
I think it's the same thing with you. Is the holding fee part of the weekly fee, or is it added on top of?
The holding fee, so if a child did not show up for 1 week, they would pay the $10 if they wanted to keep their spot in the program. And they would not pay the $65 that week. They would pay the $10 to hold their spot. Say if they went on vacation or something like that, you pay the $10 instead of the $65 to hold your spot.
So if someone wants to sign up for the summer camp, do we have these every week? So when you say weekly fee, so there's something for 13 weeks, 12 weeks in the summer?
Yes, I think that's part of the program, if Brent wants to speak to it.
Okay.
Morning, Mayor, City Council,
Morning.
Daniel. Yes, there's two locations, Southside Recreation Center and Carl Ray Johnson Recreation Center. And the summer camp goes for 11 weeks. We have 60 kids at each location. So then normally we have a waiting list. So that's kind of the idea. We couldn't even go to the waiting list because we couldn't track the parents down or whatever. So that's why we're trying to implement the $10 just to hold that spot if they're planning to come back, just to help us kind of gather and be able to put the next person on the list. So.
Right, so when most people sign up, do they say, my child's going to be here for the entire 11 weeks?
The majority of them do, yes. But then we get a couple of them, hey, my kid's not going to be here for the next 3 weeks because they're going to grandma's house. We're going on vacation for a couple of weeks. We're taking that cruise you just mentioned a few minutes ago, whatever the case may be. But some of them don't bother to tell us. So we're going to put something in there that says they have to tell us by the second Thursday and pay that money to hold that spot, or we can go to the next person.
Yes, Dan.
Mayor, we did have a discussion about the holding fee, if that number was actually a good number or not, based on the fact that there's quite a need in our community for these slots as well. If you're gone for 3-4 weeks, that's $40 really, and when we could actually have a child in there that really needs a service, and we're foregoing those monies that could be coming in as well. So we thought, we're not sure if $10 is enough, or if...
To me, it's almost, who cares? And I wonder if it's enough of a fee to encourage someone to make sure they notified us.
We can understand definitely if you're going to be gone 2, maybe 3 weeks, but I mean, if you're missing half the time, or maybe you're gone 9 weeks out of the 11, and you basically took a slot that another child could have had. So that's a concern on my end, and that's a discussion we did have. So we did talk about, is $10 enough, or do we need to be looking at something else?
If we know that, I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. I just wanted to ask, when y'all were talking about that, did y'all not come up with maybe he could only miss so many times in those 11 weeks, and then he wouldn't be eligible to come back to the program? That way you'd have another child to take that slot?
And that's actually a very good question, because if you do put a timeline, or you miss for more than 3 weeks, at that point, the holding fee is no longer $10, but it's going to be a certain amount. So that in itself is a possibility as well. But again, my issue is just to make sure that we do have those slots available to the children that really do want to be there and are going to be there every week.
Is this the first year we've had the holding fees?
Yes, sir.
Maybe we use this as the beta year, and then you can obviously come back to us next year with what you may need to.
Yes, sir, and that was exactly my goal. I didn't want to put a financial burden on any of the families, and just $10 sounded like a reasonable way of keeping track to me, but it definitely can come back with more information.
It's not a burden if you communicate.
Yes, ma'am. True.
Yes.
How many of them typically opt out for a period of time? Are we talking 10 kids, 20 kids?
It depends.
Just a rough guess.
There's 60 spots at each location. We've had as few as 30 in the location before. The longer you go into the summer, then parents are trying to get that quick vacation in, or send them away to grandma and grandpa before they go back to school. It just varies so much. For the beginning, at least the half the summer, it's
nearly every kid has a point in time when they're going to be out. And trust me, $65 is a small price to pay to get rid of your kid for summer camp for a period of time. If you got a 13 or whatever, I'm thinking, I think your holding fee needs to go up to at least $20. I mean, if you don't do some revenue on this thing, I try to tell people, if you don't do this to make revenue, to pay for it, not only pay for it, to pay the people we have, and you're going to forego several hundreds of dollars with kids that are out of kids that would pay. So I think you take your holding fee to $20 and at least try to recoup some of that out of it.
Particularly if you're saying on some occasions we can take 60 and only 30 show up. I mean, 30 times 65 is a lot of revenue to miss for a simple reason of just lack of communication. People need to understand, again, that there are other kids on a waiting list who would really like to be there, and we've had to say no to them. So I'm actually in agreement with Tom that the $10 is too low. We probably should relook at that number and then use it as the test for the first year. So I would entertain a motion with that change.
I'd take a motion as written, but change the holding fee to $20 per person.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do we have any public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor of the proposal with a change of the holding fee going to $20, not $10, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to item 3, Article A14.000, cemetery fees, Section A4002, cremation, Section A14.004, overtime, and Section A4.006, disinterment to adjust said fees.
Okay, so I think we have a proposal to increase 3 fees for cemetery and then to remove one that is no longer applicable. I'll go through each fee, and then Jeremy Walker is here to discuss. So the cemetery weekend grave opening, the current fee is $170 for the weekend opening, plus $1,250 for closing, for a total of $1,425. The proposed fee is $200 for a weekend opening, plus the $1,250 closing, which would not change, for a total of $1,450. The cost of service is $305, and the financial impact would be $50.
Would you stop right there? So
Yes.
you're saying that if someone unfortunately dies and needs to be buried on a weekend, there's additional fees?
I would ask Mr. Walker to come speak to that.
Good morning.
That fee that we're talking about here is just if the employees have to come in just to dig the hole on that day. That's why it's $175. That's the fee for that.
And that's historically been done because we're paying overtime usually for those employees a lot of times to
Correct.
come do that on the weekends. So if the family chooses not to go during a weekday, then that's been.
Sometimes it's not choosing, this is when they
Right.
passed away, so it's a reality.
It has historically been in place by the council and cemetery board based on it's more expensive for the city to cover that on the weekend because of overtime.
Ooh, this doesn't read well.
Jeremy, cost of service, $305, what is that?
That's the paying our employees and also the work that they're doing for us using the backhoe and for the time digging the grave.
Jeremy, could you clarify, is that 305 compared with the 175 and 200, or with the total?
So
That's just the cost of opening on the weekend, so it's comparing with the 175 and 200, not with the 1,400.
Mayor, maybe this may help a little. Maybe let me ask
Okay.
a question. Could the assumption be made that the grave opening would usually be done Monday through Friday, even though it may be a Saturday service, or are there some unusual situations where it is opened on the weekend?
Correct. It is normally, if it's a Saturday service, the grave is normally open during the week, and we do charge an overtime charge for the service itself on the weekend. But this is just pertaining to, far as if our guys have to come in, say if a family wants a Monday service, then they have to come in on Saturday to actually open the grave, or on a holiday to open the grave.
So the current fee is $175,
Correct.
and you're proposing a $25 increase, so the fee already exists.
Yes, ma'am.
And then there's also a $25 increase
Yes, ma'am.
on the closing. Am I reading that right? Opening and closing.
On the opening, the actual work itself, for them to come in and actually do the work, is what we're talking about.
You're going from 175 to 200.
Correct.
And the cost for that service to the city is actually 305.
Correct.
So you're bringing it up to 200, closer to the 305.
And the actual cost of the closing is staying the same at $1,250.
All right, so we're asking for $200 for a service that costs $305. And the
I'd like to
financial
point out the
impact
financial
is,
impact there is $50, so we're clearly not expecting this to happen very often, because that would be twice.
Twice a year, actually.
so that fee exists, so it's not like it's new.
Oh, would you like to see the city comparables?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so Abilene is charging $1,200. They include the opening and the closing in one fee. Odessa, $1,200. Midland, $1,600. Long Haven, which is here in town, $1,720. Lubbock is at $750, and Belvedere is at $13.45.
Belvedere's here too,
Yes.
yeah, so. And ours is what, $12.50? Is that what the number was?
It would be comparing with the $14.50 proposed combined fee.
Go back to the next slide. So $14.50 compared to Abilene's $1,200, Odessa's $1,200, Belvedere, Lubbock. Do I have further questions? Do I have any comments? Do I have anything from council?
Move to approve as presented.
All in favor, say aye.
Public comment.
Oh, sorry, I'm going to back up. Public comment, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve Hampton. I have some knowledge in this area. I feel that your prices are already very substantial and that you're trying to keep up with the corporate cemetery, which is unreasonable. So I would suggest that you, if you keep it at $50, $25 increase, that's fine, but I would suggest you not address this issue for a long time. You're making a good profit on this, and there are other parts to it. I guess you're going to cover those next, about disinterment and cremation fees also.
Well, that's part of this presentation, and
Okay.
so.
We haven't got to that.
Yeah, quite honestly, we won't take a vote yet till we have the other items on here. Do you need or do you need a vote on each of the individual?
I was about to ask you, you can do it either way you want to. It might be better to take all of the cemetery-related fees together and then take it as one vote.
I'll withdraw my motion and wait till we finish.
Great, thank you.
Here's the cremation, burial, opening, and closing. The current fee is $400, proposing $500 right at the cost of service. The financial impact expected to be $3,000. And the comparison with other cities, Abilene's at $350, Odessa at $300, Midland at $400, Long Haven here in town again, $695, Lubbock at $300, and Austin at $500.
Why did we throw Austin in here all of a sudden?
I'll ask Mr. Walker to answer that question.
The reason we threw Austin in here is because Belvedere here in town, they don't have a section for just cremation burial. So I had to get something that was close by, and it was Austin. And that's compared with the city cemetery in Austin.
All right, go back to your first slide on this. So ours would be the most expensive regionally.
It is, other than the other Long Haven here in town. And I would point out that it is in line with the cost of service that we calculated.
So our cost of service is more expensive than other cities for what reason?
Doesn't necessarily mean that ours is more expensive. It may mean that they're subsidizing theirs. You know, there's all sorts of factors that could play into what theirs are. I don't know what theirs are.
But we use them as a comparison, so if we're going to use them as a comparison, is it apples to apples or oranges to peaches?
Mayor, if I may, in the past, City Council has wanted those comparisons with other cities. I've always felt that if we have a cost of service, and I want to make sure that we're doing it as efficiently as possible, but that's really the true cost is what we want to show. City councils in the past have wanted to see, well, what are other cities charging? Which is why we actually throw that example out there as well. But it's also kind of a comparison to see where we are as far as our efficiencies. One thing you'll see later on in comparing with other communities, it's obvious that there's some communities that haven't adjusted their fees in years. You know, they don't go through the process that we do. And we want to do this, as Tina mentioned, we actually do review our fees every year, but we bring certain fees every third year to the City Council. So again, on our part, it's here because previous councils wanted to see that.
Jeremy, were these fees reviewed by the cemetery board?
Yes, sir.
And they recommended approval of them?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
Expensive to die. Okay, continue.
Next up is disinterment, reinterment for an infant. The current fee is $400. It would be half of that if it was in disinter only. The proposed fee is $1,000, again, half of that for disinter only. Cost of service is actually $685, and the expected financial impact would be $600. And in comparison with other cities, Abilene is charging $500, Odessa $4,000, Midland $695, Lon Haven $5,000, Lubbock $400, Belvedere not applicable, excuse me. And I'll go back to the previous slide so that you can again see what we're proposing. A proposed fee of $1,000 for the city of San Angelo.
It's a big jump.
It is.
Reason for that increase?
There is a reason for that, and Mr. Walker, if you want to talk about that and what that means as far as the disinterment and what issues we may face in doing that. So,
the reason that we want to increase this fee was simply because the health hazard. We've had to do this, I believe, twice already this year, and we just don't know what we're exposing ourselves to or exposing our employees to, and so we just kind of want to increase this to as a health hazard. We don't know. It's almost like a liability in a sense.
The same liability every community would have or every cemetery would have.
For our personal protection that we can go through, that we don't have to pass this on to the death?
Excuse me?
What kind of health hazards?
We do. We wear protective wear. We have to go out and buy equipment, to protect our guys. So yes, this does include that.
Billy, it looks like you have a question or comment.
Is this a court-ordered thing, the disinterment?
They do have to have a permit for us to disinter.
Is that included in the current fee?
No, ma'am, it's not included.
Permit from
the state. It's a voluntary thing. What happens in the cases that we've had this year is a family member, the infant passed away in the 1960s, and they have a family plot now in another town, and they wanted to disinter the infant to put the infant on place them on the family plot.
So then why would we reinter?
Same situation. It would be in our cemetery.
Moving here?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I'm with you, thank you.
They may disinter from the baby land that we have, and they have a family plot in another section of our cemetery, and so we would reinter there.
Okay.
We think this might happen once a year.
It varies.
Okay.
It varies.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Walker, could we go back to the other slide? Can you help us understand the wide disparity between the different rates? Do you have any knowledge about why there's such a wide?
Only one I know is for sure is Lon Haven, and like it was stated earlier, it is a corporation, and so that's why their prices are so high. But it's because of the liability. A lot of people just have a problem with disinterring the dead, and they really just want to try to discourage people from doing it. Lubbock, it's a city cemetery. Abilene's a city cemetery. Midland is privately owned, and Odessa, it's Ector County Cemetery.
Do I have further questions?
I have one,
yes,
Mayor.
Billy?
On the previous conversation, the city manager mentioned, just trying to make sure we recapture what it cost us. So the cost for that, if you go to that next slide, I think you said is $685. So why would we propose a fee that's above the $685?
This is what the board had recommended, and this was I was bringing to council, and that we just thought that was a good number, and so that's why we placed it there.
Okay, so now, when you were mentioning the hazardous gear that your employees have to don, is that covered would that be covered in the $685?
It would be.
Or is it above?
It would be slightly above that, because we have 4 employees, and if by myself go out there, it would be 5.
Okay.
So it would be slightly above that.
But the cost of service is based off of those 5 people.
Correct.
Do you think you could consider proposing a fee that's in line with what our cost is?
You can make that motion when we take a vote.
Okay.
I don't have an issue with that.
Do I have, Tom, it looks like you're looking up something. Do you have a question?
I think Tom's going to make a
I'm
comment.
just,
but
yeah, did you have one, Harry?
Please. If we take a look at the overall budget for the cemetery budget basically is operating in the red. So, you know, from my perspective, even though this is quite an increase on this, I think we probably should be looking at what we can do to allow that group to get back to where it needs to go. Their fund balance, let me rephrase that, their fund balance is in the negative.
I mean, with 30% of it realized for the month, we're already nearly 100,000 in, you know, in the red, not in the black. So I certainly understand trying to take this off of taxpayers, you know.
Well, I think that's a good comment on a big picture. But if we do one of these once a year, twice a year, it's not going to change it from black to red. And I think where we know the cost of service is less than the fee, then I have a problem approving the new proposal where maybe we are saying that we need to relook at other things in order to get it from red to black. But I don't think this particular item is going to do that.
No, it won't. And that's a very sensitive one. I agree. That one's hard.
There's actually still one more part of this presentation if you wanted to wait before you take a motion.
Go ahead.
So the last one is just the removal of a fee, the cremation, burial of cremains. And I'll let Jeremy speak to why that fee is being removed.
Currently, our cremation service on the weekend is $200, and we were just going to remove this and just have strictly just $325 for our overtime charges on the weekend, period.
Regardless of whether it's cremation or any.
Correct.
So it would be $325.
Yes, ma'am.
So you're not removing it, you're just establishing the same fee.
Correct.
So this isn't really a removal of fee.
It is a removal of a line in the ordinance.
Okay, so any questions or comments on the cremation fee? All right, so we don't have.
Would you like me to go back to the first one, or?
Yeah, well, I think what we probably should do, if you all agree, is to take each item and vote on each one separately, because I think there were comments on each specific area, and we can vote on that. So then the first motion we are looking for is item 3, Article A14.000, cemetery fees.
Mayor, if you'd like,
Yes.
you could gain a consensus to see if you can get one motion that would fit everything. If there was, it seemed to me that during the discussion, it was really that third part that was the one that might change from what's being recommended. So you might just kind of go and say, does anyone have any changes to this as presented? And then you could get it in one motion if you want to.
It would be simpler. So if, in fact, someone would like to make a motion on item 3 to be inclusive of the cemetery fees, the cremation, the overtime, and the disinterment, with the one adjustment to cost of service down from 1,000 to 695, I would entertain that motion.
I would make that motion.
Billy
The
has
685?
685. Billy has made that motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Tom seconded, and now we will have public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve Hampton. My comments are addressing the the cremation fees. I think those are excessive. They're a good price. More or less what you're doing there is a post hole, and you don't have to pull in a big backhoe to do that, because you're just burying a large book size. And so that seems excessive to me. The disinterment fee does not seem excessive to me. You go in with a backhoe, you dig out, and you sometimes pull out a concrete box, and then you have to cover the hole up. That does not, there are no health issues there. You might need to wear a dust mask, but I don't feel that there's any health issues there. Overtime is done on weekends. We could close on Sunday and not have a Sunday charge, but and that way keep things like that. But a lot of times weekends are very busy. So also these charges, do they include the setup? They don't include the setup, which is the tent and the chairs. This is just the digging of the grave. So those cemetery fees are pretty high, and you're going to make a good profit there. The cremation seems to be excessive to me. The disinterment seems practical.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Did we have a motion and a second and a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Passes 6-1.
I'd like to clarify my nay, if I may.
Sure.
I just don't agree with the passing on the weekend burials in the time of death for a family. So I agree with everything else besides that.
Okay, item E4, Article A11.000, Fire and Rescue Service Fees, Section A11.001, Service Fees, subsection F, Ambulance, Transport, and Transfer Fees to adjust said fees.
So these are all ambulance fees for fire. If you'd like, we can go through them one by one as we did with cemetery.
Please.
Okay, so for fire, ALS 1 emergency, we have a current fee of $830. We're proposing a fee of $875. The cost of service, okay, I'm done.
You're done, Tina.
Speak fast,
You're
girl.
done.
Bye.
Nice try.
The cost of service is $1,205. That's an average cost of all categories of medical runs, and that number is calculated by our consultant who does every year. If you'll recall that we receive some monies back for our Medicaid for ambulance services, and so that's calculated when we do that big study to see how much we can get back from the state. The financial impact for this one would be about $24,000. And as far as comparisons with other cities, Austin Travis is at $901, Denton's at $855, Kerrville at $837, Lubbock UMC is at $1,503, Midland at $432, Odessa at $480, and Schertz at $1,440. And I'll go back to our proposed fee when you're ready.
Go back.
We're proposing a fee of $875.
Okay, and your actual cost is $1,205, so,
Again, that's an average cost of all categories of medical runs. So any ambulance runs, that's an average cost spread out over any ambulance run that we would do.
and so would all the comparison cities be the same?
I can't speak to how they calculate their cost of service. Again, as Daniel said earlier, some of these cities are clearly subsidizing with other monies.
Definitely, when you look at Midland, Odessa, I'm really surprised by their fee at $432 and $480. It makes me wonder how often they've looked at that fee, especially when you do look at the cost of service. And again, as Tina did mention a while ago, we'd have a professional take a look at that to determine what that actual cost should be. So I'm really surprised by those two numbers, actually.
You don't have Abilene on there.
I would ask Chief Dunn to speak to that. Thank you.
Morning, Mayor, Council. Abilene is a private EMS service. City does not run the service. Midland and Odessa, and I don't remember which, I'm sorry, one of them has not looked at their fees since 2004, and the other one has not looked at their fees since 2010. So it's been a significant amount of time since they've even addressed these. Big Lakes City operated. There's some of the well, I don't know if they're privately operated. They're in this area. Big Lake is run out of the fire department. Eden is probably tied to the hospital. Louisville is tied to their fire department. Ozona, I'm not sure about. And Sonora is run through their hospital. But their fees are pretty close to where we're at, or actually those are all above. But
Go back to the first slide then. Do I have questions from council or comments? If I have no questions or comments from council, do I have a motion?
Well, there's several items on this.
Oh, you want,
Mayor.
Yes.
you want to,
Do you want to go through all of them again like we did with
Sure.
cemetery and then, okay. So this is fire ALS 2 emergency, current fee of $955, proposed fee of $1,010. Again, the cost of service averaged across all categories of medical runs at $1,205 and a financial impact of $797. As for our other cities, what they're charging, Austin Travis is at $966, Denton at $900, Kerrville at $1181, Lubbock UMC at $2,095, Midland at $609, Odessa at $580, and Shirts at $1,600. And as far as Big Lake, $1,150, Eden at $1,800, Louisville at $1,045, Ozona at $950, and Sonora at $994. Again, our proposed fee is at $1,010, and I'd be happy to go through those other slides again if you want to see them.
when was the last time we looked at these fees? And
we have not adjusted fees since 2012.
Mayor,
yes, Billy?
what's the difference between an ALS
One.
1 and 2?
Okay. ALS stands for Advanced Life Support, and the 1 and the 2, we base these categories on Medicare. There's 5 general broad categories. These categories, ALS 2 is the highest run. It would be like a code, which a code would be a cardiac arrest where we're pushing all kinds of drugs, using the advanced equipment and a lot of supplies to deal with this emergency. ALS 1 would have some of this, but not to the extent that an ALS 2 run has.
And where is Shirts?
Shirts is outside San Antonio, I believe. The ones that we were picking, we were trying to do fire-based EMS city services, not private. I can tell you that when I had to have an ambulance transport several years ago out of Houston in private, it cost me $2,500 for that regular basic transport.
Any other question, comment from council? Okay, we'll move on to the third item, which is ambulance transport transfer fees.
Okay, next we have BLS emergency. Our current fee is $770 with a proposed fee of $810. Cost of service of $1,205 and a financial impact of just over $19,000. As far as other cities, they're at $831 in Austin Travis, Denton's at $787, Kerrville at $687, Lubbock UMC at $1,164, Midland at $399, Odessa at $380, and Shirts at $1,210. Big Lake's at $850, Eden at $994, Louisville at $1,045, Ozona at $925, and Sonora at $994. And again, our proposed fee is $810.
How do you come up with the 810?
It was about a 5% increase on that. Since we hadn't adjusted since 2012, and our costs have went up significantly for certain things. In the last 2 years, our pre-filled drug costs have went up between 500 and 600% on things we're using, such as epinephrine, atropine, lidocaine, Benadryl, all the liquid drugs that we push. So,
But those are billed separately?
No.
From this?
No.
So those,
our cost is inclusive other than mileage. It includes any supplies that we use.
so you're saying the increase is from 5% to 600% in terms of what this service?
That's 5% on the total bill. We may, depending on the amount of drugs that we use, we may use one drug where the drugs before were costing about $2 a box. Now they're between 10 and 12. So we maybe use one, we may use 6. You never know on what the situation may be.
So if you took a look at last year, for example, and divided out the number of runs plus the revenue, what would the average cost have been?
Number of runs, repeat that.
Well, if you, quote, use one box one time, 6 boxes the next, I'm assuming that per run, there is some analysis of what that run costs. So if you took a total of all of those runs.
Yeah, that's in, all this is in.
So that would be in the 1205 is what last year.
Everything in that cost there is administrative costs, everything that it costs to get these in and out the door and make them run.
So it would include the medication, it would include
that's-
staff time, it would include depreciation on the ambulance, all of those things comes in to get this average cost of $1,205.
Are these?
Mayor?
Oh.
Yes.
You're right. It doesn't differentiate between a low level of service run and a service that, or a run that has a high level of service. You're right. It's an average. It doesn't, the 1205 does not differentiate.
Okay. Billy, you had a question?
Guess I'm concerned about the proposed fee versus the cost of service. There's a, huge difference there. And is most of the fee covered by insurance?
Our collection rate is in the 75% range. And you need to think about it in these terms, that this cost of service that we're calculating for that Medicaid supplement that we receive back is, there's a fire station in place, but they're counting depreciation because we have to house it. All the costs that it takes to keep that there and running. What we're trying to build there, and you see that we have different costs for each one of these different things, and they escalate as our involvement escalates in the stuff that we use. So a BLS emergency would be like the second lowest. You have BLS non-emergency, which is a basic transport to us. This one, we may incur using different things in that. You have an ALS non-emergency, ALS 1 and 2 that we've already been over. Those are the 5 main categories that Medicare ties to, and most services set their rates off those. And then you have, some people bill extra for all the things they use. A lot of the insurance or Medicaid will not pay for those separate charges. That's why we put this all in one inclusive charge.
And Medicaid accepts an all-inclusive fee when you file, when it's filed?
Yes, that's how they prefer it. They will not pay if we billed for oxygen for every little thing that you use. They just pay a set fee.
All right, so Billy, before I comment, do you have any further comment?
So I guess since our cost is so much more expensive than the proposed fee, is this what what you think is the best proposal for us?
Our cost is, the $1,205 that we're saying, again, is an average cost of all of these runs combined.
So we're saying that
So
some
for
of
this
them may be
particular run, it
less
may-
than $810?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
Some may be more than 1205, some may be less than 1205 to come to an average of that 1205.
But they may be less than the proposed fee, is what I'm saying. Is that possible?
Is it possible for an ambulance run to cost less than $810? Is that what you're asking for this type of ambulance run?
No, I think the question was, are we going to see proposed fees which exceed 1205?
No.
No, I think she state what you're asking.
No, if we're proposing a fee of $810 and our cost is $1,205, and you're saying, Tina, that that's, an average cost over all of the services that we provide, so could we see substantially less cost of service for a BLS versus an ALS? Does that make sense?
Well, what you're wanting to know is, but because you have an average cost of $1,205, basically means there could be some that are at $600 in real cost versus some that could be in real cost $1,500 because
Okay.
you're looking at an average. So an average is $1,205, but you're going to have fewer, lesser, and more in order to get an average. So the question mark you're asking is $810 the lowest fee ever associated with the BLS emergency.
Y'all have confused me. I don't know what I'm not.
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
Answer
Our
that
next
question.
fee actually is less than this one, so.
Pardon?
Yes,
Our
Tommy?
next proposed fee is less than this one.
So is there a BLS run, Chief, that costs less than $810?
The next category is less. It's a straight BLS basic.
But this is BLS
This is
emergency.
BLS emergency.
Could the
That's
cost
all
of
we're talking
service
about.
Would you
potentially
ever
be
have
less than
a run,
$810?
BLS run, that costs less than $810?
Chief, put a. can
Just
you
a
put
minute, let him answer
medical-
this question first.
Not really what you're asking. I mean, this is the set fee. We are guessing on what we're going to use on that. I mean, I suppose that, you know, depending on what it is, if it's a BLS emergency, it could turn, and some of these things, you know, they go bad while you're in there, so then they turn into a much, where we use a lot more stuff than we would normally use. I would think that this is the base price, and we just encompass it, like I said, based on Medicare categories. We anticipate that we're going to have to use a few things on a BLS emergency, possibly bandage, gauze, those kind of things, and those are calculated into this type of fee.
All right, Lane, did
Could
you have
put
a
some
question?
actual medicals so you can, some people would see exactly what the ALS 1 to BLS. So respiratory distress, that would be in.
I do not have that with me. According to, when we make the run, our billing company goes through there and they categorize this according to what each one says if it hits this category. So if we do, like I said, a code, it'll go through there, check mark, use defibrillator, check mark, use this. And that's how they determine which category it gets billed in. We never, you know, unless you're just a basic transport and you're doing nothing, we know that's going to be a BLS basic, but that's how it gets billed. The personnel never know exactly which one it's going to go out as, depending on what they mark in their report that they used.
When you mentioned a minute ago that your recovery rate on fees is about 75%, so that, when you make that comment, does that mean that there are many people, of course, who don't have insurance and aren't on Medicare, and so the cost of these services are picked up by the city? And so that would be part of the cost of service,
With
correct?
what the mayor said, is that unrecoverable 25, let's say, percent plowed back into the 1205 number?
When he calculates that number, what he is looking at for the state on their Medicaid supplement, he is taking all the costs that it costs to do an ambulance. And some of these things, such as I said, so the cost of a fire station, you have depreciation. Now, normally you'd think we get it for fire, it's for fire. But we're running ambulances out of there, we're using electricity, we're using all the stuff in there, and they take a percentage of that, and that is a cost, a city cost, city's paying for that, to actually use these ambulances. So there's other cost in there that you don't normally think of that's actually costing to run the ambulance.
But the question mark is, I understand depreciation, I understand cost of service. The question is, the 75% of the people who are there, this fee, regardless of whether it's BLS emergency or ALS 1 or 2, regardless, if you only get 75% of the fees covered by insurance policies and or Medicare, Medicaid, if you will, then the other 25% that's not covered by any insurance category is picked up and paid for by the city.
That's correct.
But
Yes,
that
that's
would
correct.
be, because it's still cost of service, regardless of how it's paid for, in that 1205.
I do not believe it's in that 1205. I do not believe he would be allowed per the state to include that lost revenue or bad debt expense, if you will, to be included in that number. So it would be above and beyond the 1205 if that were to be included.
That's correct. In other words, the way to look at it would be 1205 is strictly the expense side, not the contra revenue side. So if you were if you wanted to recover a full 1205, to oversimplify it, if you wanted to recover the full 1205, you'd have to assume 1205 was the 75% number and gross that up to a 100% number that you would bill and then only collect 75% of.
That Medicaid supplement money that we get back, that is part of that money that we don't collect. So I'm looking at what the billing company says we're getting, so it's probably gonna be a little bit higher than that once that other money comes in, but that's not being run through them on our billing side. Our billing side collection is about 75%. So if we get $500,000 back from Medicaid supplement, that is covering a lot of those Medicaid or uninsured. That is what the state is trying to reimburse us some of those funds for.
Harry, you had a question or comment?
Just it's a comment, and I don't know that I can clear up some of this, but this is strictly simple cost accounting. So you take the total number of expenses that you've got divided by the total number of runs that you got, and that's where you get the 1205. Do the same thing with all the rest of these as you go down there. So from that perspective, I don't know if that's oversimplifying it for people, but that's all you do.
No, what the questions are, what's included in those costs. It's not, we understand what you're saying, but the problem is we're just simply asking what is in that cost.
That cost
Define
is
the
everything
cost.
to do business.
That's the reason we're asking the question.
Yeah,
Correct.
everything to do business. If you have your restaurant, for example, if you have that restaurant set up, you've got a cost to do business for that year, whatever that is. Then you could sit down and say, for the number of meals that you serve out of that, then you have an average cost per meal. That includes labor, taxes, overhead, building, everything that you got. That's how you get to that total number. And that's all you do.
I know, that's exactly the reason why we're asking about the Medicare, Medicaid insurance, because he brought up the 75%. So that is a part of calculating the cost. That's the reason we're asking the question. That's the reason we ask for a definition of that in terms of whether that's part of the cost of service or even if it's allowed to be a part of it.
Well, it's not. That's the income side. All you're doing is looking at the expense side. The expense side is where you get the cost of service. You don't look at that 75% there because that's an income side. So from that standpoint, when you're looking at cost of service, it's simply taking that, all your expenses divided by the number of runs that you make. That's all where you get for the cost of service. Now, the other side of that is if you're not operating in the black, then to Mike's point, then you may have to take a look and say, okay, I've got to do something different. But from this perspective, the 1205 is simply those number of runs and that total expense.
That's why we're asking the question, to understand the 1205.
I'm good.
You good? We're good.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Next up is BLS non-emergency. The current fee is $600. Proposed is an increase to $630. The financial impact on this one would be about $2,200. And in comparison with other cities, Denton's at $787, Kerrville at $430, Lubbock UMC at $862, Midland at $399, Odessa at $380, Schertz at $1,090. And those are all the comps we have on that one.
So in this one,
And
the
our
fee,
proposed fee
the
again is $630.
the cost of service is the same as in the previous one of BLS emergency, and yet there the fee was $810, and here the fee is $630.
Again, that 1205 is an average cost of all runs across the city. So
All right,
some
but
are going
why
to be
is there a
hi-
difference between the current fee on the other one of $770 and this one is $600? The proposed fee being $810 on this one, and the proposed
Because,
fee on the next one,
the current
$630.
and
If the
proposed
cost of
fees-
service is the same.
The current fee and the proposed fee are based again on the Medicare guidelines and groupings, and that's how we've always done that in the past. The cost of service, again, we're using what the consultants gave us as an average cost of service across all runs across the citywide. So it's including, some may be higher, some may be a higher cost than that, and some may be a lower cost than that. As you said earlier, some may be $600, some may be $1,500, so the average cost comes out to that $1,205.
It's still confusing if the cost of service on this one,
I
BLS, non-emergency.
I agree, and I
is the
understand
same.
that. It was just far too complicated to try to do to group them in each type of run to come out with that actual cost of service. So we chose instead to go with, because again, it's multiple pages in a spreadsheet that the consultants do to even get to this number. And so we decided to just go with the average cost of service to give you an estimate of what that was.
Mayor, I do agree. I think what you were saying, and we definitely understand. What would have been best would just say BLS non-emergency average cost. What would that be? And that would give you a better idea, actually. So, yeah, we do understand that. But it's not the way that maybe next time around, Chief, is there a way that
We might be able to ask the consultant, because like I said, he's going to take all these other costs that we normally don't. And Councilman Thomas is right in one aspect, that if you had a business, all your costs in there and you divide it by that. The thing you have in here is we have all these other assets that we are using for EMS that have cost that go towards this that you normally wouldn't think of. And he has calculated these costs into this and give us this, we made over 13,000 EMS runs last year in the varying categories. So how you figure out how much it each costs, I don't know what the labor it would take to go through each individual run and go, we use 3 boxes of drugs on this one, 9 on this one, or all the other things to do. Then you get into the factors of how long were you on that run, how much time did it take. The variables are almost endless to try to calculate that.
How many more of the BLS emergency calls do you make versus the non-emergency calls?
Non-emergency, we made 437, and we made 3,161 in the BLS emergency.
So repeat that number again, Brian, if you would.
437 runs in the BLS non-emergency, which is this category, and 3,161 runs in the BLS emergency category.
So, questions, comments?
Next up is the mileage fee, which is currently at $10, a proposed fee of $12, and a financial impact of $12,260. This is per patient mile. And our other cities are charging $13.50 in Austin Travis, $15 per mile in Denton, Kerrville at $22 per mile, Lubbock UMC at $24 per mile, Midland and Odessa at $8 per mile, Schertz at $20 per mile, Big Lake at $21 per mile, Eden at $21, Louisville at $15 per mile, Ozona at $18.50, and Sonora at $20.80. Again, our proposed fee is $12 per hour, or per mile, pardon me.
When was the last time this fee was relooked at?
2012. And that is per patient loaded mile, but you also have to remember this. When we go on a run, we may be gone an hour, hour and a half. That ambulance runs that entire time to keep everything, all the drugs and everything cooled in there. So it's not shut off during that time frame. While they're in the station, they're plugged to a shoreline that keeps an air conditioning run to keep those drugs and everything inside there cool.
Questions, comments on this fee? No? Okay.
Next, we have fire transfer out of city but still in county. The current fee is $100, proposed fee of $150, with a cost of service of $139, and a financial impact of $13,948. Other cities, Austin, Travis, Denton, Kerrville, and Lubbock UMC, not applicable. Midland and Odessa are $100 each. Schertz is not applicable, and that would be it for our comp cities. Pardon me.
This fee we applied, I don't know when we put this in place, probably 12, 14 years ago. And we apply it to people that do not live outside of the city to help cover the cost, since a lot of this is subsidized by the tax-paying citizens inside the city limits of San Angelo.
Do I have questions? Do I have comments? Nope.
Next up, fire for a transfer outside of the county. The current fee is $200, proposed at $250, and the cost of service $252, with a financial impact of $107. Other cities, most of them do not do this or provide this service. Midland and Odessa both charge $100 each.
Do we do this frequently?
Depending on, this fee here is basically for when we have to go out of town, we spend the night. That fee is to cover the motels and the food that we have to pay, because when we leave for these, we're generally having to stay out of town, and this is for basically an out-of-town transport to Houston, Dallas, those kind of places. No, we're doing it 20 to 30 times a year at least.
The math suggests twice a year. Financial impact 107. So going up $50 would be.
Well, that's not a linear equation as far as, and the guy that figures this is our billing company. We do this more than that.
Linear in his mind, 2 + 2 isn't 4.
Well, he's got the things on how it pays, on the percentages it pays for private insurance, Medicare, all the different things in there. Whether or not, of course, most of the time we get guaranteed payment on the ones that are going out of town, because there is a tangible cost to the city. If we're going to burn so much fuel. I'm going to have to pay for a motel. Usually when we're doing these, we're down to minimum, and we're having to pay overtime to personnel to be out of town. So the transports will come in at 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, and they'll be gone until noon the next day before they get back. So you have overtime cost and food and motel for these personnel that are out of town.
I actually think they just did their math wrong. I think they took the proposed fee times the cost of service to $2 instead of the current fee versus proposed. But we see it, we get it. Let's just go.
Fire standby services, the current fee is $340, $85 per hour after 4 hours. The proposed fee is $400 with $100 per hour after 4 hours. Cost of service is $402 with $100 per hour after the 4 hours, with a proposed financial impact of $7,020, pardon me. Other cities are charging $125 per hour in Austin Travis, Denton's at $150 per hour, Kerrville at $100 per hour. Lubbock UMC does not provide the service. Midland at $50 permit fee. Odessa is variable depending on the service requested, and Church is at $125 per hour. So standby services would be if there's an ambulance requested for perhaps a football game or something like that.
So this applies to schools primarily?
We work about 90 to 100 football games a year. They pay this already. Right now they're paying $85 an hour minimum, 4 hours. The rodeo, graduations, anything like that, they require when they request standby. We hire overtime personnel to do this because we do not pull from the minimum manning on the floor and compromise the fire or EMS provisions that we have for the citizens. So this is a service that they request and pay for.
I mean, we actually have to have two. So long story short, we pay for it. It's great service. We have them there in our state. I would say nearly event that has something that's sports related should have this. And I mean, you won't ever have an argument from one of us about paying the appropriate fee.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this standby service? Next.
That is it for fire. So would you like me to go back through them, or how would you like to
Does
proceed?
she need to review any particular slide or question on any particular line item?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Lane, second by Lucy. Public comment?
Steve Hampton. Basically, I would propose changes of increases. I think the chief has been very conservative in his raising only 5%, and it's not been raised since what, 2012. So I would propose that the first four, which is the ALS 1 and 2, and the BLS, ER, and non, go as follow. $1,200 for the ALS 1, ALS 2, $1,400, BLS 1,000, and the BLS emergency, BLS non-emergency 800. I have some experience in hospital I served on a hospital board and have experience. Danny was a hospital accountant.
Financial officer.
Many years ago. So he has understanding of your collectibles will eat you up, as you were on that.
Trying to get into the conversation of.
Was on that. So I believe you are correct. The others should be raised as suggested, in my opinion. We have big backlogs of collectibles, I would suggest, I believe, and then we're building a new fire station and adding ambulances. The city has lots of expenses in this area and needs an income. So I would raise those sizably. Would you like for me to repeat?
If you would, please.
1,200 on the ALS 1, 1,400 ALS 2, 1,000 BLS ER, or emergency, BLS non-emergency 800. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Any further public comment? Would anyone like to change the motion to the numbers, fees that Steve just suggested he thought were realistic?
Gone through this. This is year 6 since it's been 2012. I'm going to use Tommy's quote. Let's use this kind of like a little stepping stone.
Come back next year, Chief.
That was the deal. Need to incrementally do it. I think the sticker shock would be, and what he said is probably in line with a lot of the places, but the sticker shock would be not good.
Not saying that we shouldn't jump to it, but let's use that as a little stepping stone.
A little bit at a time, incrementally.
Yeah, come back next year, Chief.
So can we make an addendum to the motion to come back for further review in 1 year?
I was about to say the normal process is every 3 years, but direction from council to bring this back next year could be part of that motion, but you would have to make that part of your motion. You'd have to make that part of your second.
So we have a 3-year cycle with all of our fees divided in thirds, split up into 3 years.
So we review all of our fees every year, and we invite department directors and managers to bring any fees that they think are not where they should be. Every single year, we review anything that comes up. But we do have a set group every 3 years that we go in depth and make sure whether it's brought up by someone else or not, whether we feel like the cost of service is in line with the charge for service.
So is there a fee related with doing that review, Brian? Surely we have to pay that consultant something to give us this report?
We pay him, the consultants, a percentage of what we get from that Medicaid supplement. I believe it's like 6%.
Okay.
So.
Lane, you want to?
You want to amend your motion, Lane?
Yeah,
To add
Lane needs to.
the
if you
1 year.
choose.
Yeah, I'd like to revisit this to where we can get that increment going. So I'll move to approve with a relook a year from now on this specific item.
Lucy seconds that. So all in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we are now moving into item 5, Article A2.000, Building and Construction Related Fees, Section A2.002, Building Permit Fees, by restating new Subpart C to provide for site plan review fees, amending Section A2.004, Miscellaneous Permit Fees by repealing and deleting Subpart E, Customer Service Inspection for Existing Structures.
Okay, so this is a permit for a site plan review. We're currently not charging for this service, and I'll let John or Al get up in a minute and speak to that. The proposed fees would be at a Tier 1 valuation of $50, a Tier 2 valuation of $100, a Tier 3 valuation of $250, and a cost of service that ranges from $73 to $315. We expect the financial impact to be $9,050. Other cities, Abilene is charging $250 for a minor site plan and a regular site plan for $500. Odessa's at $500. Midland does not have a fee. Wichita Falls is charging $75. Round Rock is at $1,000 plus $200 per acre. College Station is at a 1.5% cost with a $600 minimum.
And describe what a site plan review is. And why there hasn't been a fee attached to this.
The site plan review has been part of the building permit review, and so as part of submitting a building permit, what the building permit application looks like and looks at are the building details, what the insides look like, what the construction materials, all the architectural kinds of details. The site plan is what the overview of the site is, where the parking is located, where they put the dumpster, where the driveways are located. So it's hand in hand with the building permit. But one of the things we're trying to do with this is separate those two. What most cities do is have a separate site plan review process. The way we do it, we don't allow a developer to come in the way we do it currently and submit a site plan for review without their whole building permit review package. What is more typical in other cities is the developer can submit his site plan review while they're still working on the architectural plans. And so this is part of that idea of separating the building permit from the site plan so that those applicants can go ahead and get their site plan reviewed even while they don't have the building plans done.
What's the difference between Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3?
Those are based on valuation. Our initial thought was just having one fee, but then, we have small projects that may be, building a 1,000 square foot building on a small lot versus, say, a Walmart that takes a lot more review. And so those are just based on a breakdown of valuations. Small projects would be the cheaper $50 fee. The largest projects like a Walmart or an apartment complex would be the $250.
Billy, yes.
John, what's the problem with the way we do it now? You said it would typically be submitted with the building plans and everything, all inclusive. What's the problem with doing
Well, there are a couple of issues with that. One is that, like I said, you have to wait to submit your site plan for review until all your building plans are done. You basically have to submit it all as one package. This would allow a developer to submit that site plan separately and get it reviewed while they're still working on their other plans. It gives them basically a head start. The other issue is right now, since we don't charge for site plan, we actually don't charge a building permit fee until they pick up their building permit. So what we have is some developers will submit all of their building plans for review. We spend the hours and hours of review time telling them, yeah, everything's okay, or here's some things you need to change. We go through all of that process. And then if they back out of the project, we haven't gotten a dollar. Yet we spent all that time. This won't address all of that issue because we still would only collect the building permit fee when they get their building permit. But this would at least give us some ability to recoup some of the review costs that we have to do up front.
Okay, thank you.
So right now, Tom, go ahead, please.
John, will this help simplify the process when somebody comes in or submits you, says, this is the barn or this is the building I want to build? And then at this point, we can come back as a city and say, all right, you're going to need A, B, C, D, E, and F. Because I hear a lot of feedback where people are trying to build something, they start in the process, and it's multiple trips. Now, it's gotten a lot better, but it seems like, number one, this is a way to recoup some investment we have in manpower there. But number two, you could almost, I'm willing to go with this, if we almost have an outline or a format for these people, when you submit this is what you're going to need to have to go ahead and get your permit. I think that would help simplify the process if that's where this is going. I'm not quite sure if it is.
Yeah, I mean, the basic thing that it's doing is separating the site plan review from the building permit review. Both would still happen, and people who want to do it the same as we do it today can still submit them all together like they do today.
That would be the same fee then as today?
No, it would still be the additional fee for the site plan review. That's something we have not ever charged a fee for, but it does place a cost. There is a cost of service that we've just never recouped before. And so either way you do it, they would still be an additional fee of the $50, $100, or $250. But it simplifies it in the sense that many developers are ready to go. They've had their, generally two different sets of people do, one does the site plan and then the architects do the building plans. And so developers would typically hire those two different folks. They may be ready to go with the site plan and could get it through the review process and do all the back and forth that's necessary there, even before the architectural plans are ready. But since today we accept all that as one package, if there are issues that crop up with the site plan, it may be holding up a building permit when the building plans are already good and ready to go. And so this gives them an earlier point in the process to get it into us.
Would there be an instance where you approve the site plan, and then in reviewing the building plan, the site plan had to be redone because of some changes required in the building permit?
That would be very uncommon. I won't say it hasn't happened. I can think of at least one example where the interior dimensions of a building had to be expanded, and so that adjusted the site plan. That would not result in a new site plan unless it was just, they completely moved a building across the site. But, reorienting the building on a site or something might happen occasionally, but less than a handful a year.
Well, then if we're asking for an additional fee because of the site plan, although in the past the site plan was part of the fee with the building, so are we reducing the building permit fees to accommodate those people who before it was all one fee for site plan and permit fee?
We are not. We actually, what was changed a couple of years ago was a way of doing that. What we did was implement a fee of charging 10% of the building permit fee for the site plan review, but that created some issues in terms of how that's going to work with our plan review software. And so that's another reason that separating them into two separate fees made more sense because of the way we will be doing that with our software.
So people will be pretty confused when they come in the next time if they're doing multiple projects in the city, and before the building permit fee included the site plan review, and now it won't.
Yeah, we will be presenting this at our development task force meeting later this month, assuming it's approved, and then we'll work with communicating that out to our frequent customers to let them know of the change. What we typically have done in the past also is post a notice at our entrance there that tells people fees are changing, they'll go into effect on such and such date, and here are the different fees. So we try to use 2 or 3 methods of getting the word out to folks.
Are you saying most cities currently, the Abilene's, the Odessas, not Midland, Wichita Falls, currently separate site plan review fees from building permit fees?
Yes, yeah, I would say the vast majority of them do it that way, and that's what you see here. Midland is the one that still does it with the zero fee. Really means that they include it in the building permit review fee.
Do I have questions for John? Comments?
There is one more piece, and I don't know if there may not be other slides for that. You'll notice in your background we are eliminating a couple of fees. Those are things that we no longer do that were pre-existing fees, but it's a service that's not required anymore, and we have not done these for years, and so haven't charged any for years, but it's just cleaning up the ordinance to remove that.
So go over those.
Well, it's just the customer service inspection fees for existing structures. That's where we're inspecting fixtures and things. It's actually a state requirement, but now that's done privately by individuals. It's not a service that the city offers for private.
What was that fee before?
Based on number of fixtures,
Yeah, it's
according
based
to
on
what
the
your
number
staff
of
report says.
fixtures, 32, 42, or $120, and for residential it was 32 flat fee.
Next one.
I think that's all for the permits and inspection fees.
Okay, so do we have a motion to accept the site plan fee proposal?
Move to approve is presented.
I will second.
Do we have public comment?
Steve Hampton. I am against this. I think you were on the right track there, Mayor. There was no reduction in the original expense. This is not covered by insurance, as would be the ambulance runs or anything like that. So this just goes right to the people. And if you're going to break it out, then you should reduce the other, and then put it on a one-year inspection to see if it needs to be increased like it was on the last one. Thank you.
With a motion, further public comment? Anyone else? There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
I got one second. One more time for John.
Wait. Okay.
So just to clarify, it's not a workload issue. It's splitting it out, technicality of what fee's going where, instead of like what Steve was saying, building permit fee, site plan, you're splitting it out. It was $75 for building permit, is that correct?
Well, the building permit is based on valuation, so it can vary from a minimum fee of $35 to the county jail is $70,000 or something.
He's not reducing any of those.
He's not
That's the point.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it is a split out of service, where it was all inclusive. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, any other, before I take a vote, all in favor of this, say aye.
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 Opposed? Aye. Passes 5-2. Would any of you like a break right now?
Hallelujah.
I think it's a
Let's
yes,
do
Mayor.
it.
Good call, Mayor.
Call the
You couldn't go home.
council back to order at 11:06 a.m., and we will start with item 6, Article A9.000, planning-related fees by amending Section A9.004 to provide for administrative adjustment fee, amending Section A9.005 fees for preliminary, final plats, and variance fees, and amending Section A9.007 miscellaneous planning fees by amending fees for street name change and release of easement, and adding fees for urban design review, appeal, certificate of appropriateness, and disannexation. Is that a real word?
It really is.
It is. So we have several fees proposed to either change or add to the ordinance for planning, so we'll go through them again one by one so that you have time to ask questions and clarify any misunderstandings. Our current fee for zoning variance or adjustments for planning is $250. We're proposing a fee to separate these out, one request for variance at $250, which is the current fee, and a lesser cost for the request for administrative adjustment at $170. The cost of the service is $183, and we expect a financial impact of $1,120.
So are we asking for $420 versus what's currently $250?
No, that's not my understanding. I'll let Mr. James answer that question, though.
Tina, I do want to correct, that's not a financial impact 1120, it's a negative 1120.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was my highlight of the day. I almost missed it. We're
that
actually
linear?
decreasing our financial impact with this fee.
Yeah, right now we just have one fee for both a variance and an adjustment. Adjustment is basically an administrative variance that staff is allowed to grant within very tight parameters, but there are certain things we're allowed to grant that don't have to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. So the ones that go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment would still be the $250 as it is today. This would just create a lower fee of $170 for those that can be approved by staff. So it's not you don't add the two together.
Okay,
Correct.
that's
And so
what I want.
it's purely a lowering of the fee for that one classification.
Excellent.
Comparison with other cities for Abilene, Midland, and Wichita Falls, and Lubbock are shown on the slide.
Okay. Questions from council? Nope. From this end, does anybody have a question or comment?
No.
Okay.
Shall we move on to the next? Okay.
Yes.
Planning for a street name change, the current fee is $250 plus the cost of the signage. We're proposing a fee of $500 plus the cost of the signage, based on a cost of service of $578 with a expected financial impact of $500. So we're guessing there may be about 2 per year.
Who requests these street name changes, and why would we allow it? Or, first of all, who requests them, and what would be the rules on requesting a street name change?
It could be a developer. We had a case a year or two ago. The previous plat adjacent had stubbed out a street, just like 100 foot long, and gave it a name. The developer who was tying into that street wanted to name the street something differently, so we had to do a street name change on that little section so that it all matched. It could be somebody wanting to rename a street after, in memorial to somebody, and so they can request that of City Council, and so those are the two most common
We've had businesses
reasons.
request it. The street runs by their business primarily. so
Correct.
it depends.
Questions, comments? Next item.
Planning fee for release of easement. The current fee is $300 with a proposed fee of $500. The cost of service is $618. We're expecting approximately 4 per year for a financial impact of $800. And this is what other cities are charging for that service.
And describe a release of easement.
Where a property might have an easement across the property for a water line, a sewer line, electrical power lines, those sorts of things, and maybe the line has been moved or gone away, and so this would release that easement. It basically takes it off. You can do that through a replat, although that's a more complicated, more expensive process. This is a simpler process if all you're doing is releasing that easement.
Does this happen how many times would you expect this to happen in a year, 1 or 0?
Just a handful of times a year. It could be when, Suddenlink moves their lines from one part of a property to another, and so they will then want to remove the easement across the property where the old line was, that sort of thing.
So the release of an easement and creating of a new easement, is that all in the same fee, or is there a separate fee then if you ask for a release and then you ask for a new easement?
This would be separate, but creating a new easement doesn't necessarily have to go through the city unless it's part of a plat. You can create an easement across your property for the benefit of a private utility without necessarily a review by the city.
Questions, comments from council? Next.
Next up is urban design review. We're currently not charging for this service. The proposed fee is $125 with a cost of service of $138. Or expected financial impact of $1,500. And here's what other cities are charging for that service.
Describe urban design review.
This is a special review authorized by the zoning ordinance. It's similar to a site plan, but it's where we look at things like landscaping, building materials, colors, those sorts of things that normally for smaller projects is not regulated by the zoning ordinance. But for projects, typically those over 25,000 square feet, it requires a separate urban design review for those things. This is something we've been doing for a while, but there's just never been a fee for it. So it's an extra service that we've been providing at no charge.
So would someone have to pay a site fee as well as an urban design review fee?
Yes, because this is a separate. Typically, the kinds of things that the urban design review looks at are not provided with the site plan review. A landscaping plan, for example, although a developer may put together a landscaping plan if they're doing landscaping of their own, it's not required as part of our review, as well as the architectural renderings of the building materials and colors and those sorts of things aren't required for the site plan review. So these are additional things that have to be submitted and reviewed by staff. Well, it's for any multifamily or any construction over 25,000 square feet, or an addition of 10,000 square feet to a site that already has 25,000 square feet. So it's really only for major developments.
So why all of a sudden a fee if it's been done before without one? I guess before it's been inclusive in the building permit fee and the site review fee?
No, this was something has never been incorporated. the cost of service has never been incorporated into any of those other fees. It's purely a fee we've provided. It's a service we've provided without any fee or cost recovery. As they mentioned earlier, this is the third year for us, for our department, and so we took a more comprehensive review of all of our fees, and in addition tried to identify services we provide that have not charged a fee. And so
Someone doesn't have to have this urban design review to get a permit.
If they're bringing in a development over 25,000 square feet, then yes, it is required by the zoning ordinance. So they would have to do this. But again, on any project that's 25,000 square feet or more, we're talking at least hundreds of thousands of dollars of a project, if not into the millions. So, your Walmarts and your projects like that. And I say that just to say that $125 is not a huge cost to the kinds of projects that this applies to.
Questions? Further questions? Comment? Next.
The next fee that is proposed is for appeals and amendments. We're currently not charging for this service. The proposed fee is $200 with a cost of service of $240. Expected financial impact of $800, meaning we're expecting about 4 of these per year. And again, here are what the other cities in our area are charging for this service.
This is another one of those we've never charged for, although we've implemented over the past few years more processes that have an appeal. For example, short-term rentals, if they're approved or denied at Planning Commission, you've seen a couple of appeals to you all. Right now, if anyone wants to appeal that denial or approval to you, there's no additional fee to bring forward that appeal. And this would just add a basic fee for any of those appeals or amendments.
So if the Planning Commission said we won't approve the STR, if that person who's requesting the STR appeals the Planning Commission decision, then they have to pay $200 in order to bring it to council?
That's correct. Now, the other thing this does, that would be the appeals. There's also amendments. Right now, for example, if somebody comes to the Planning Commission for a conditional use or to you all for a special use, and let's say a year or two later, they decide one of those conditions they want to remove or they want it to be reworded. Right now, that would simply be a brand new conditional use or special use application, which is $385. So for those circumstances, this actually represents a reduction of the fee. It would allow them to seek an amendment to one of those existing conditional uses for the lower fee of the $200.
John, I understand the amendments, but on the appeals, the cost of service of $240 for an appeal, what is that? What's included in that service?
That's basically the additional preparation and staff time for putting together the information to bring to the appellate body, which in most of these cases would be bringing it to you all.
Wouldn't it have, that preparation already have been done when you took it to the Planning Commission?
Well, it depends. Oftentimes, issues are brought up at the Planning Commission, and so we have to do some additional research to answer the questions that were raised in order to present that to you all. And so that's typically what would be the additional work necessary. Revising the staff reports, creating new exhibits and the PowerPoint, those sorts of things.
I don't know who this is a question for, but as we go through this, if we're looking at making a motion on this, can we separate the appeals from the amendments? Or would it be voting on that as it's presented?
Well, you can make a motion how you wanted, and you could also make a motion that you didn't want one of these, in
I guess
at
I
all.
struggle with a decision being made at the Planning Commission, and then we charge citizens
I do too.
to come before us. So, but the amendment part, like I said, I understand and agree with. It's just the appeals that
I will just
have a
note that
problem.
I think it was all of the other cities, correct, that we looked at, except for Midland, all charge a similar fee for those appeals. And I will say that although this isn't the main reason for this, what we have not had this problem yet, although at one point it looked like there might be an issue with short-term rentals. Part of the issue is having somebody pay something to appeal to help avoid frivolous appeals of lots of things. So I guess I would suggest if you're inclined to lower that fee, our preference would be to have a fee in place, even if it was just like a $50 fee.
If, for example, I'm just using this as an example, it's not necessarily something that's happened, but if, let's say, the Planning Commission approved an STR and the people applying for it were granted that, but somebody in the audience decided they wanted to appeal it, anyone can appeal it. It doesn't just have to be the property owner specifically, right? Because to me, it would see if it's not someone's personal property that there's an appeal about, I don't think the property owner should have to pay for an appeal. If it's somebody in the audience who doesn't like the decision of the Planning Commission, then I think an appeal fee would be reasonable.
I think we could probably write it that way.
Because I think that is where the frivolous appeals come into play, is when someone not associated with that appeals it because they don't like the decision. And I would support, yes, Lane?
So right now, this would be applied to the property owner?
Yes.
It would, anyone who appeals.
Yeah.
Right.
Not the person saying, I want to appeal, but if, in that case.
Well,
just
if the Planning
appeal.
Commission, for example, denies a short-term rental and the applicant wants to
But in the case that the
appeal
mayor's
to
talking
you
about
all,
where it was accepted and the audience wanted to appeal it like we've seen.
this would be charged to either the property owner or if it's a citizen appealing an approval, as we've written it.
How do you determine who you're going to apply that to?
Well, whoever submits
appeals
the
it,
appeal.
whoever files the appeal.
Okay.
So
Okay.
You have to actually submit an appeal to
Okay. that makes
typically.
sense.
that's
to
why I'm
office.
suggesting that the appeal not be, a fee not be charged if I'm the one appealing, but if someone in the audience doesn't like the decision and they want to appeal it, that they would be charged, so that would stop the frivolous interference, if you will, maybe.
I agree
Lucy?
with the mayor. I believe that that's the one way that, you know, at least the citizen who's going to appeal it, we're not charging them, but someone else who comes around and says, okay, I don't like it, I'm gonna appeal their decision, then let that cost be on them, but not on the person who actually went out there and did it. So I agree with the mayor on that.
I think that's a clarification that I think probably needs to be made, because I was under the impression when I first read this that it was the person that filed the appeal that was going to pay the fee, not necessarily the owner of the property.
No, that's correct. It's whoever is appealing.
Okay.
Whoever.
Right.
What we're
Okay.
trying to say is don't
Separate.
charge the
Property.
The original
Right,
applicant,
the original
then
applicant.
if they're appealing a denial, you wouldn't charge them.
Because I think that's almost offensive that that the property owner have to pay for the appeal.
Pay to see the judge.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Okay, next. Okay, make a note of that, because when we ask for the motion, we're going to need to,
Mayor, it looks like there's significant consensus related to that, so I can just help during the motion
okay,
process.
that'd be great.
Okay, next up is planning plats. The current fee for a preliminary plat is $400. A final plat is $445, and a replat is $350. We're proposing a fee for plats, whatever kind, at $275, with a first variance fee of $125, and an additional variance would be $75 per variance after that first variance.
Well, go back to that page, and so let's say then would almost every property owner, the person filing for the plat would end up paying the $275 plus $125 and perhaps another $75 or $75 or $75. So the $275 plus $125 is $400.
So the idea here is that in the past, we've calculated the cost of service for a plat, just an average based on all the plats. But we know that many of our plats come in without any variances. They're not asking for a different street width, or they're not asking for whatever the variety of variances that you can ask for. So what this does is actually reduce the fee for those plats where there are no variances. And those are much simpler to process on staff's time. And so it would reduce them for those. And the reason we set the fees where we did is we also get plats with a single variance. And so for those, the fee wouldn't be changing. It would still be the $400. The only plats that would see an increase are those that are asking for multiple variances. Now, we don't get a whole lot of those, but we've seen some plats with 3, 4, 5 variances. And each of those variances takes time, additional time to research and provide the information necessary for the Planning Commission and then you all to make a decision on whether or not to grant that variance. So it's reducing the fee for those simple plats that in the past have really paid too much in terms of the cost of service, but it's making the cost of service applicable to those that created that additional work through multiple variances.
So John, could you go back to that previous slide? On the proposed fee where you have a replat, what would that be due to? Would it not be due to a variance?
No, a replat is simply when you're platting a piece of property that's already been platted. So, for example, if I have a platted lot that maybe it's an acre and I want to split it into two to sell off, half acre and a half acre, that would be a replat. And part of that was just simplifying it. These fees are all so close. And the cost of service doesn't vary that much that we thought it was just simpler to have one fee across the board for all the different types of plats. And you'll note here that the cost of service is the proposed fee is much less than the cost of service actually would work out to be.
Further questions or comments? Okay.
Next up is a certificate of appropriateness with a current fee of $100 or $385, depending on how the ordinance is applied. The proposed fee would be $200 with a cost of service of $288 and a financial impact expected of $500.
What's a certificate of appropriateness? Cursing or?
A certificate of appropriateness is basically what it's called when you get approval to make changes to a historically designated property. So if it has historic zoning through the city and it requires the Design and Historic Review Commission, the DHRC, to review, say you're changing out the windows in a historic building, those have to go to the DHRC for review and approval that they meet the historical nature of the property. And so this one's a little confusing in that we currently charge $100. That $100 fee was actually inadvertently removed a few years ago. So what we actually should be charging is the $385. We've continued to charge the $100 that is listed on our fee schedule, but we only realized through this review process that the $100 was not still in the ordinance. So basically what we're wanting to do is reinsert that fee into the ordinance, but with the proposed fee of $200.
Does this certificate of appropriateness often apply to something other than historic buildings? Because one of the things that, if it doesn't, is the fine is that it already costs an arm and a leg to redo a historic building. And many things, if it's really a registered historic building, you can't change it anyway because it's a registered building.
This would only apply to properties that the city council has designated historic. So for example, if it has a National Register designation or a state historic designation, unless the city council has adopted historic zoning on the property, then this fee would not apply. This also doesn't apply to, there's the general review of things in the river corridor, for example, or the downtown as part of that river corridor review. This does not apply to those. This particular fee only applies to historically designated properties through
Typically,
zoning.
those properties are designated because the property owner requested the zoning overlay.
In most cases, yes.
I really have an issue with people, for us charging any additional fees to people in the historic district, because it costs, I'll repeat it, it costs an arm and a leg to redo a historic building. And what we don't want to do is to put up more obstacles and costs for redoing historic buildings that make someone start to look at it and go, it's just not worth it.
John, is this the cost to take this to the DHRC? Is this proposed fee, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's the cost for the staff research and putting together staff reports and research to present to the DHRC.
I can't support it.
The only fact that remains, I think, on those that hasn't been mentioned is typically if you request and receive a historic overlay zoning on your property, then you do get a tax abatement of some sort from the city. Is that correct, Tina?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm not aware of that. That's something
Only
we
if you
have
apply for
looked
Texas
into.
historic tax credits or something like that, but you don't get one
That may have
otherwise.
changed. That was when I was in planning, so I've been here a long time.
And
so-
that's typical in many of our peer cities.
It's
Our
all the
peer
gray.
cities have that tax abatement or tax refund for historically designated properties.
Now, if you're proposing that, we can talk, Rick.
Well, I actually am a supporter of that because it should encourage. That was the reason the zoning went in place beginning, to try and encourage.
I would point out that this one is not a new fee. We are currently charging $100 for it, and we are just increasing our fee in line with the cost of service and not actually even recouping all of that. So.
Well, it's never been charged. 385's never been charged. All you've ever charged is $100, whether it was in the code of ordinance or not, right?
Yes, and I just pointed that out. If your action today was to deny this request, the fee would actually go to $385.
So if we accept this, it is to say we support $100 and do away with the code that currently says $385?
Well, what I would urge you to do is add the fee, and then you can decide if you prefer to keep it at 100 or the proposed fee of 200, or even zero, whatever your preference is. But we need to add this into the code one way or the other so that we don't start charging the 385. Does that make sense?
So you're asking us to change it from what currently is $385 down to $200?
Technically, yes, that's what's in the ordinance today.
But we've only been charging $100.
Correct. And so what we're really asking for is clarification. What do you think we should be charging? If you make no decision today, we would take that as a you're okay with the current ordinance, and we would start charging the 385. So we need a direction one way.
Oh, no.
So what's in the ordinance right now, the 385?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Again,
So-
that
But
was
it's not
only,
been charged.
That was only because inadvertently that was taken out a few years ago. Our fee schedule has still had the $100. We didn't realize that the $100 was removed a few years ago until we were researching for this particular fee change.
And what he's saying, we can go 0, 100, or 200, correct?
Or 385, whatever your
Well,
preference is.
we don't want 385, but those are three options.
Split the difference, 150.
There you go.
Clarify, it does allow that. The abatement is allowed up to a 20% for the zoning and up to a 50% if you present a project that is eligible. That's just city taxes.
So say that again, Rick, please.
It says annual tax abatement, once the historic overlay is established, the designated property is eligible for local tax abatement benefits of 20% of annual city taxes. Tax break for renovation, you can go up to 50% based on that, and that's what's in the planning flyers.
So I guess that's given through the tier zone?
And
or-
no, I think it typically has been, when I was involved with it, it's something that abatement is processed through the tax appraisal office. Once it gets the designation, then it is eligible, and the tax appraisal office would actually apply it. So that may be something that we need to look into.
We need to look
If-
at and see if they're actually
right,
doing that.
If people are not getting it, then we need to look at that.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Next up, disannexation. The current fee is $0 with a proposed fee of $600 and a cost of service of $897. We apparently expect about one of these per year. Doesn't happen very often. And other cities do not charge for this service.
So currently, they're in the city and they're asking to get out of the city?
Yeah, and we only have one example of this, at least that we have record of, and that was when the county asked to have part of their lands removed from the city. Again, as we were looking at things we do that we don't charge for, this was one that popped up. I don't know that it'll happen again in the next 10 years. We thought we would just suggest a fee just in case. It does take a significant amount of staff time to prepare to meet all the state law requirements for a disannexation. And so in case it happens again, we thought it would be best to have a fee in place.
Any comment? No. Move on to the next. That's it.
So how do you want to do this, Mayor? I mean, there are some council people that are not satisfied with some of the presentations. Most of them are okay with me, but I just like to know what direction we want to go on this.
What I would recommend that we do is, if there's any out of the presentation that we've seen today, I'd like those pulled out separately and voted on separately. And then what's left in the bag would be voted on.
You could certainly do that. What I was noticing during the discussion was, of course, there was consensus related to the appeals not being charged to the property owner. And then the discussion over whether or not that should be 0, 100, or 200. That seemed to be the only points of conflict that I noticed as far as consensus overall with the council. So you could do that in one motion if you can get consensus related to that second fee, that 100.
What we'll do is do 3 different votes. We're going to do the first one on the appeals, and so if a council member would like to make a motion to not charge a fee if the property owner submitting an appeal would not have to pay a fee, that could be a motion.
Let me make a small correction. Okay. The original applicant, because they might not own the property yet or whatever. So
if someone would like to make that motion?
I will make that motion.
Okay. And is there a second?
Second.
Is there public comment?
So let's clarify that so I understand. So we're saying when there's an appeal, there is no fee, regardless of who it is?
No, that's not what we're saying.
Okay. The original applicant.
What we are saying is the original applicant, if they appeal the decision, they have no cost. But if somebody in the audience appeals it, then there's a fee to stop the frivolous appeals.
That's what I understood the presentation was, so that's why I was confused.
No, the presentation was no matter who appealed, there was a fee. Okay, with that, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Then the second item that we should take up is this last item, which there was a question about whether the fee should go up to 200, if it should be the 100 as we are charging today, or whether it should be the 385 as it is written in the ordinance. Is that properly stated? Okay. So with that, is there a motion on the floor on that item? I'll make a motion that the fee should stay at $100. Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the current $100 fee, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1. Then what we would do is, taking those two out of the conversation, then we would have a motion to approve all other items presented for fee increases as presented, I should say. So someone would like to make that motion. Tom, I see you shaking. Your- Okay, a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Number F, no, sorry, 7. 7, Article AD.000, Planning-Related Fees, Section A9007, Miscellaneous Planning Fees, by adding a publication fee for newspaper advertisement. And so, that's it. I'm a little confused. Okay, you're on. I'm up to date.
I'm waiting for my slides to stop. Okay. So this is a newspaper legal notice fee. The current fee is $0. We're proposing a fee of $125. Our cost of service ranges from $123 to $168, depending on the number of notices that we have at one time that we publish in the newspaper. The financial impact is expected to be $6,875.
So who's paying for this fee?
This would be the applicant on a case that requires notification in the newspaper. Certain plats, rezonings are the most common examples. This is something that's never been calculated in the cost of service for those applications. But we didn't want to, one option we considered was just increasing the cost of a rezoning, for example, or a plat to incorporate this. But not all of those necessarily require newspaper notification. So by separating it as a separate fee, only those people who are going through a process that by state law requires a notice in the newspaper would have to pay this fee.
How many of those do we see?
4 or 5 a month, give or take. It could be as few as 1 or 2, up to 7 or 8. That's one reason the cost of service is different, because, you know, a newspaper notification twice as long isn't necessarily twice as expensive. Again, I'll just, for background information, one of the things we looked at was passing on the actual cost to the applicant, but that gets tricky because we don't always know the cost at the time they're applying. We'd have to calculate it later and collect that, and we thought the minimal fee of $125, which is basically the low end of the cost of service, would be simpler and more predictable from the applicant's standpoint.
So before, did we take the actual cost of the newspaper notice and apply that out of the fee that we already charged them for replatting or
No,
change of-
this has been completely subsidized by the general tax fund. This has never been incorporated into any of the other fees.
Is there a question or comment from council? Okay. So go back to the cities. So in these cities, then that cost of newspaper advertising is calculated into their replat fee, for example.
Yes, but as I mentioned earlier, in any of these cities, if you're doing a replat that does not require newspaper notification, you're basically paying for that because they've averaged it across all of the plats. So the way we've proposed it, only those folks who are doing something that require the newspaper notification would have to pay it, rather than averaging it across all applicants.
Okay. All right.
That's the only item, is that correct, Tina?
Yes. Just finish reading it. Okay. So with that, then if there's no questions or comments, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve, Mayor.
Is there any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Okay, item F. Consider ratifying COSA DC's approval of the bid secured by AEP Texas North Company, AEP, from Crossland Construction Company Incorporated in the sum of $582,809 for construction of utilities and other infrastructure within the San Angelo Business and Industrial Park pursuant to the development agreement by and between COSA DC and AEP authorized by resolution of the City Council adopted on January 9, 2018. Robert, Mr. Sneeman, you're up.
Good morning. First of all, remind me never to go behind Tina again on one of these.
Brought your lunch and change your clothes if you know you're going to be here this long, huh?
I was the fifth item on the regular agenda. I just didn't know that the one before me had 7 parts. Council's, I'm sure, familiar with this project. This is related to the AEP new facility out at the industrial park. They purchased 52 plus or minus acres from us in phase 2 of the industrial park at a cost of about $1.1 million on October 11th of 2016. The sales contract requires that COSA DC provide all utilities and infrastructure to their site. That includes street access, water, sewer, everything except electrical. They're going to provide that themselves. And because AEP is under a fairly tight time frame, they need to be in their building by September of 2018. So COSA DC approved a development agreement with AEP on December 13th for AEP to provide the infrastructure under their contract as a modification to their contract. And at the time, it was at a cost not to exceed $750,000. And council then approved that or ratified that on January 9th, I believe. The proposed improvements that we're talking about include only those required to support AEP, and we're referring to that as Phase 2.1. The remainder of the improvements would be done as we get the Economic Development Administration grant final approval, which is in process now, and that would be Phase 2.2. Originally, staff received an initial proposal from AEP's contractor for $3.1 million that included all of the drainage improvements. I'll show you an exhibit in a minute that kind of breaks down what we're talking about. So staff then requested 2 additional proposals. Proposal number 2 included only the drainage improvements required to complete a channel crossing of Gateway Drive, and that came in at $1.24 million. And then proposal 3 excluded all drainage improvements, and that which were by far the highest cost items, and that came in at a cost of $582,000, deferring all of that drainage to the future project. And our idea there is that we would generally get a better unit cost by including it in a larger project. So if we include it with the second phase, we expect that we would get a lower bid amount, and we would be competitively bidding that. To give you an idea of the areas that we're talking about, the green area shown on this exhibit is the drainage improvements. That includes detention and drainage, deepening of the channel. It also includes a culvert crossing in this location under Gateway Drive, and then some additional drainage downstream and improvements. The second option that we looked at, the limited drainage, you can see there, was only doing the drainage improvements from this point to this point, but also including that channel crossing. All right, come on. And then, of course, the third option, the $582,000 option, would be just what's shown there, sort of in turquoise, which would be the street improvements, and the underground utilities. And again, staff is recommending approval of that third option, and that is what COSA DC approved at their meeting last week.
Meaning the $582,000.
The $582,000, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Questions for Bob?
Approve.
Move to approve. Second. Any public comment? With No public comment. We'll take a vote. All in favor of the $582,000 proposal, item 3, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion
Thank you very much.
passes. G, consider adoption of a City of San Angelo policy governing the use of city property for film production and authorizing the city manager to update the policy from time to time as necessary.
Mayor, that one's mine. The San Angelo Convention and Visitors Bureau, they've been working towards having the city of San Angelo certified as a film-friendly community, and that's through the Texas Film Commission. We do have Diane Bays here. She's the vice president for the CVB to talk a little bit more about this and what this means for our community as well.
Council, City Manager, and I was really hoping for a proclamation for the shortest agenda item, but I guess that'll have to come later. I did want to share a little bit, as I think I've shared with you, Pat, in the past. The Texas Film Friendly designation is done through the governor's office at the Texas Film and the Texas Film Office, and over 100 cities in the state of Texas have this designation. And the requirements for that include a permit, giving them at the film office photography, which I've been working on for the past 6 to 8 months, and then also attending a workshop. I've done the workshop. I did that back in, I think, June, July timeframe, and then we submitted the permit. The permit that is here is something that is a sample that the Film Commission actually gives out to other cities so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. So this is already something, and they have already seen it and had made some suggestions, some changes and corrections on it. So it's really kind of a standard operation procedure for the Film Commission. What this does also for us is this puts us on the radar with the Film Commission when people are looking from out of the state, majority of the time, wanting to film in Texas. This puts us in that group of people they will send leads to based on the needs. And so this, again, is an opportunity to bring heads and beds, put people into our community spending dollars, and then also gives us that brand awareness of who we are and what we have available here in San Angelo.
Great. Sounds like a wonderful opportunity. So this is, do I have a motion to adopt this policy governing the use of city property for film production and authorizing the city manager to update the policy from time to time?
Move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diana. Thanks for waiting around, too. Okay, item H, consider a resolution establishing a policy related to the process for appointment to city boards, committees, and commissions when said appointments result in the requirement of a resignation from service on another city board, committee, or commission. Are you on, Brian?
I am. There was some desire to just address this, that, you know, every once in a while conflict could come up. Currently, COCDC is the only board that in the ordinance there is a conflict, but it could be established with another board in the future. So this would just establish some rules of decorum for how we treat, you know, how each council member respects each other council member and their appointment process.
Okay. Any comments or questions for Brian concerning this item? So is this something we take a vote on, or is, okay, so do I have a motion to consider the resolution establishing this policy?
So move.
A second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved 7-0. We will now, at 11:53, go into closed session. Executive session under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, Exceptions to Requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. So Section A, Section 551.072, deliberations about real property regarding 703 South Chadburn.
Mayor, I need about 10 minutes probably, and that'll.
Okay,
that'll
so
do
we'll
it.
take a 15-minute break.
There you go.
12 noon, and we apologize for being so short.
We're just an example for those that went before us.
Exactly. So, Tommy, you want to
Sure.
read?
I'd make a motion that we approve the First Amendment to the commercial lease agreement with the Historic Orient Santa Fe Depot, Inc. for property located at 703 South Chadburn to provide for a term that ends June 15th, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Follow-up and administrative issues. Consider items discussed in executive session, which we've just done. Consideration of approving various board nominations. The Construction Board of Adjustments and Appeals, David Jacobo at large to a second term ending February 2020. Do I have a motion to accept?
moved.
All right, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 7-0. And then item C, announcements and consideration of future agenda items.
I've got-
Billy, Lane, Lucy, Tom, Tommy, Tom.
I would like to hear something from Shane on the status and the purpose of the Vendetti machine, how it's working in Platte. I've had lots of requests on that, so I think we need to retouch base on, number one, why and how that was purchased and the purpose and kind of the status as we go forward, keeping the right amount of people to work and operate that machine.
I'd also suggest that we take a look at having a town hall meeting sometime in the late April, early May timeframe to discuss Bell Street and the improvements.
Tom, Tommy?
No, ma'am.
I would like to, what was I going to say? I had it on the tip of my tongue. I know what I was going to say. At one point, we talked about creating an ordinance, I believe, or having a discussion about the 18-wheelers using like Southland or College Hills or 14th Street as cutaways. I'm getting a lot of comments from citizens about too many big, heavy 18-wheelers going through the neighborhoods. So I'd like some
Add on to that, I get several calls, they're using lots of that up there around 44th, there's a training school that's using District 2 as a lot of their turns, and anyway, I concur with that 100%, please.
Okay, great. All right, with that, then I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
If we adjourn.
Okay, all in favor, I'm sure.
Aye.
Passes 7-0, and we dismiss at 12:03.